My son's girlfriend is obsessed with him. When my son was in high school, he had a girlfriend, we will call her N, who was nothing but drama. But young love, being what it is, I knew that if we're to forbid him from seeing her, they'd sneak around. My son had plans to attend college, which he did. N would say things to me like, "Don't you think we'd make beautiful babies?" She was serious. I told my son, "Boy, don't be stupid." He knew that he wasn't ready to be a dad. He's not an idiot. One day, before he left for uni, we had planned on spending the day together. Driving along, his phone starts chirping. Text notification. This keeps happening. I ask, "Do you need to take that?" He says, "No. I'm spending time with my mom." I know y'all, it made me smile too. The phone keeps chirping. I say, "Well, someone is desperate for your attention." He says it's N. I told her I was spending time with you. Phone starts ringing. He hits ignore. Phone starts ringing again. Again he hits ignore. Phone starts ringing again. I say, "Maybe you should answer that. I mean, what if it is truly an emergency?" He answers the phone and they talk for a minute before he puts her on speaker. I say, "Hi, N." She says, "Hi, Miss S," and we all hang up. Not even 5 minutes later, my phone rings through the Bluetooth. Called ID, identifies the caller as being N. I answer the phone, "Hi, N." N says, "Do you know where son is?" Meanwhile, son is sitting in the car right next to me, and she had only spoken to us, on his phone, not even 5 minutes prior. So I decided to be a jerk. I say, "No. I actually have no idea where he is, but if I see him, I'll tell him that you called." My son lost it and started laughing before I could end the call. I gave him a quick nudge. "What was that, Miss S?" N says, "Nothing, baby, I'll see you later." After I hung up, my son and I enjoyed the rest of our road trip in laughter.
What is something you love about your significant other that you'll never admit to them? I used to love how mentally strong and resilient, yet naive, playful and childish my ex was. She faced a shitty childhood growing up, yet she didn't allow it to turn her into a sour, pessimistic person. She legit was the most cheery, playful and fun person I have ever met. And I have to admit, she was way more mentally and emotionally stronger than me, and I loved and respected the heck out of it. Love when I'm laying in bed and she touches my stomach or puts her foot on top of mine. Helps me fall asleep like a baby. I'm so comfy. She has absolutely no idea about directions. She lives her life essentially lost when we go places. I've never met anyone that is as bad at directions as she is, but having dated a girl that was the exact opposite and made me feel like an idiot if I didn't take the most optimal path all the time, this is much better. I love that the sound of his voice literally puts me to sleep. Not because he is boring, but because his voice is such a safe, comforting sound that my mind completely calms. I also will never tell him that I was awake in August 2014, the night he thought I fell asleep on his chest when he looked at me and whispered so lovingly, "You are so pretty."
Teachers of Reddit, what is the funniest reason you've had to send someone to the principal's office? There was a student with autism who lived in a very literal world, we'll call him T. You had to be precise with your words as T could not comprehend slang or figurative language. He had an issue with another student at recess the day prior. It was something minor about a basketball. Basically, T hit a basketball and placed it under the goal and walked away. Another student grabbed it. T became angry and ultimately gave the ball to the other student rather begrudgingly. Apparently, T told his uncle and the uncle's response was, "I'd have made that kid eat a shit sandwich." Well, T made a quick stop by the litter box before coming to school. He also wrote a note to the other kid saying, "I get the ball today, you can have this shit sandwich." It wasn't a gesture he viewed as inappropriate. He actually thought the shit sandwich was a viable option for the other student. I had to send him to the office, but my God did I laugh. Even his mom laughed before apologizing. The principal still has the note in the office 2 years later.
Living life in dreams and waking up to a nightmare. Every day, Nikita would let out a defeated sigh upon realizing that it was yet another night where she would be staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep and trying to cope with the restlessness. She was an insomniac, suffering from an inability to fall asleep, and it was ruining her life. Every day, she would fail to do anything productive, feeling exhausted and drained and just not being able to function properly. She dreaded every morning and dreaded every night, watching the clock and constantly wondering if sleep would ever come, and she just wished it would so she could stop suffering. One night, she decided she had had enough. As she stared at the ceiling, she declared that she would do anything at all, to fall asleep and be done with this monotonous hell that she was living. And upon making this declaration, she determined that the first thing she would do the next day was go out and buy that damn hypnotist couch. As she went to sleep that night, she felt somewhat excited for the first time in a long while, and she couldn't help but be hopeful that tomorrow finally would be the day she was able to sleep. The next day she purchased the bed, and she was excited to try it out that night. As soon as she had laid down and closed her eyes, she felt an overwhelming sense of drowsiness overcome her, and within moments she was fast asleep, lying there in what looked like a peaceful, restful embrace. And then she woke up. It was still nighttime, and she felt incredibly energized, somehow more rested than she had in months, as if she had slept for all the days in a row for literally thousands of years. She tried to go to bed again, and sure enough, She fell asleep almost immediately and woke up in the same situation, only for the same crazy feeling of being more rested than the last time, and then the same happened the next night. And the night after that, and so on. She realized that every time she went to sleep, she woke up in her dreams, and that she could control these dreams however she wanted as long as she consciously focused. She began experimenting, by turning off the lights in her room and imagining what it looked like when they turned back on, and she found to her delight that she could see them. She began picturing whole scenarios in her head and describing them to try and see if she could make them look real, and eventually she mastered walking and talking while awake in her dreams. As time went on, it began to feel as if this was all she had been doing, sleeping and dreaming in the waking world and then doing it again and again and again. She became dismayed at how this removed her from the real world, and eventually just reasoned that since she was sleeping all the time and couldn't do anything significant in her dreams anyway, she might as well just do everything there and make it into her main existence, since that was the only one she truly had power in. And so she began living her life in these dreams and visions of perfection alone, and she yearned to wake up back in her own world so she could make the dreams into reality. But one day, she came to a horrifying realization. As she was dreaming, she imagined that she had died, and according to her logic she was supposed to wake up back in her bed, but she didn't. Instead she was trapped in her own world, essentially being forced to confront her own mortality, and it tormented her as she struggled to understand what had happened. She tried to escape, wandering through what she felt was an endless void, and eventually found a door. It was so beautiful, being made of the most exquisite lacquered wood she had ever seen, and it was so very, very inviting. She went through it, praying that it would take her back to the world where she could feel real, and then she woke up. As soon as she stood up and began walking, she knew something was wrong. She felt tired and drained, her very being seeming to have been perverted by something monstrous that had deceived her and taken her path away. She sat down and sobbed uncontrollably, clutching her bed because the only thing that made any kind of sense to her was this object that she used to sleep on. She would never be able to escape to her dreams again, and what's worse, she had no idea whether they even still existed. She went to sleep and hoped she could at least have some sort of rest, but no, she was faced with the horrible truth that this was her world now, and that she would be forced to live in it forever. Every night she goes to sleep, only to stare at the ceiling and wonder if she will ever be able to fall asleep again, remembering the once beautiful dreams that slowly became corrupted. She misses them so very much, hates herself for having believed this was all real. She hates that she is so easily tricked, and more than anything she hates how pathetic and gullible she has become. My nightmare family pranks me and gifted me junks on Christmas. They freaked out when I took all of my expensive gifts for them. My family has all been pranksters and at times entitled my whole life. But on Christmas Eve they took the cake. I was in no contact with them for years, but they convinced me to reconnect after I moved closer. Because this will be the first time I will see them after going no contact. I got them good gifts like tablets for the kids with built-in DVD players, sports memorabilia and camping stuff for my dad, brother, and uncle, specific antiques, jewelry, and appliances for my mom, sister-in-law, and aunt. I brought my girlfriend with me and was delighted to spend Christmas Eve with my family. Everything was going smoothly, and I warned my family, no pranks on me or my girlfriend, at all. They swore none would happen, but they could not resist. We got attacked by a silly string from multiple fronts. That stuff reeks and gets everywhere. Somehow we powered through that. But then came the gifts. I wasn't expecting much, but none of them even tried. I got dollar store cooking utensils, a pair of insanely ugly holiday socks that I confirmed were also dollar store, and a pink hat, and that was just for my parents. They all kept snickering and recording me as I unwrapped random junk. One is a used mirror of a car I no longer own, and the one gift there to my girlfriend was a bottle of fart spray. I told them I'd had enough, and they'd agreed to no pranks. Long story short, they weren't just gag gifts, they were the only presents there for us. I had enough and just started gathering up all the presents I'd brought. They all freaked out and demanded I give them back. I told them all that they didn't change one bit, and they could kiss all of that stuff goodbye. We bagged everything and stormed out. The family kept calling and messaging me that I was being greedy, I couldn't take a joke, couldn't think of anything to get me, and the kids were crying. They went off about how they thought I was a brat who couldn't take a joke. Then they tried to say I didn't tell the truth. I asked them to tell me what and it was a lie. They tried gaslighting, but I wasn't having it. My mother resorted to crocodile tears and guilt, but I called her and my father out as self-serving narcissists who played favorites and would rather make me the bad guy so they wouldn't have to feel bad about themselves. I hung up on them. They tried calling back again and again, but I refused to pick up, and I deleted all of their voicemails. But I kept the texts just in case I'd need to go to a lawyer. More people in the extended family were made aware of what happened. Initially, some sided with my parents and brother, but quickly switched sides. My parents then tried to turn my brother into the new scapegoat for the situation since it couldn't be me. And then it turned into a chicken fight. After about 2 weeks my parents showed up at my door to try and get me to talk to them, but I refused. I found out later that other relatives called them children, and they owed me a lifetime of apologies. My brother doubled down that what they did was funny, and refused to admit any wrongdoing. But his wife and even his kids were furious at him. He was made to delete the videos he recorded of me at Christmas by the rest of the family, and he blamed me for it because I ruined his best prank yet. My sister-in-law ended up slapping him and calling him a man-child, then saying she'd never been so humiliated to be his wife. She was unaware of what my family put me through growing up until the Christmas prank because I'd hardly seen her before cutting contact with my family. Then she gave him an ultimatum, marriage counseling and a sincere apology to me, or she would leave him. My brother stubbornly refused, and his wife took the kids and left for a few days. He then came to my house while intoxicated and yelling that it was all my fault and that I was a beach baby who couldn't take take a joke. He demanded I talk to his wife and fix things. I had to call our parents to come get him before I had the police take him away. They showed up mortified and screaming at him to shut the hell up. After a few more days my parents begged me to come over and speak to them. Took me a while to agree. And when I did, my brother was there with them looking like a kicked puppy. His wife had gone to get a consultation from a divorce lawyer. And my brother finally realized this was for real. And unless he acknowledged he was a massive a-hole, his life would be ruined. His wife did come back for the sake of keeping the kids in school. But even after months, my brother is still in the doghouse. My brother and parents apologized and admitted they never expected me to show up with such nice gifts, and figured I wasn't likely to bring anything since I hadn't seen them in years, and they'd pranked me so much that it finally clicked with them why I'd previously gone no contact. And even though I showed up with real gifts, they went ahead with their plan anyway since the prank gifts were already there under the tree, and they somehow thought I'd share in the humor. They thought wrong. I told them they would never be apologizing like this if they weren't being humiliated for their actions. To which they agreed and started trashing themselves. They just sat there looking at the floor while I ranted at them. And my mother was crying and blaming herself and my father. And my father started blaming her, and saying it all started with her. My brother for once in his life knew when to shut the hell up and accept fault. And when he finally did speak, he owned up to everything. Since it was too late to return the gifts to the store, the presents I took back were left in my garage, just sitting in a pile. I ended up donating all of them to a local church for a charity rummage sale. I was chastised by many for taking the gifts back from the kids too, but they were sharing in the delight of laughing at me that day. And now they have a lesson in consequences that it was good to have while still young. That said, my mother kind of negated that by going rogue and buying the same tablet DVD combo players for the kids that I did. They don't blame me for taking the gifts back anymore, because they understand how angry I was at Christmas. I had my birthday in March at a local pizza parlor, and my family were invited. It was their last chance, and shockingly they did not blow it. They couldn't figure out what to get me, so they gifted me a large card with $100 cash in it and a "We'll do better" apology written on the card. They also gave my girlfriend a set of sterling silver earrings, big apology as makeup for Christmas since she'd refused to see them in person till then. It hasn't been long enough since then for me to have any other kinds of details other than things that seem to be pleasantly normal now. No more pranks to me.
My family has no idea that this trip will be the last time they ever see me. Honestly, I have no idea who this is for, but I think I just need it out of my head. The circumstances of my birth were complicated. I broke up 2 marriages, and my family has never been shy about how they feel about me for that. Only one of my brothers has gotten drunk enough to tell me to my face that he resents me for existing, but I know it exists within all of them, at least in some way. I'm much younger than all of my siblings, and there was so much that happened out of our hands that I made excuses for, but my whole life, I've never quite felt part of the family. As a child, I told myself we'd make up for lost time once I got older, and we could talk as equals. Now, at 23, I see glimpses of the life I wished I had, but in the end, I'm always too much trouble to be involved. I hear everything from my father. I had to find out my niece was in a car accident from him. I had to find out my other niece had a miscarriage from him. I had to find out my oldest brother had a brain tumor haphazardly on a phone call with my father, which he didn't even know I was unaware of. I've known for a while I'm the only one trying, but for the sake of my dreams, I've given every opportunity for them to let me in, but I just can't do it anymore. I have a psychiatric service dog who aids me with CPTSD. He is the single greatest thing to happen to me. Not only did he save my life from myself, but he has made life livable. He can tell when I'm panicking and he knows pressure therapy to help me through an attack. He stops me from hurting myself in meltdowns, sits with me until the only noise I can hear anymore is his snoring on my lap. He allows me to go grocery shopping by myself. He is my soulmate, and anyone who knows me knows how important he is to me. My dating life isn't thriving, so I took a shot in the dark and asked my niece if she minded if I brought my service dog as my +1 for her wedding at the end of this month. I have to fly across the country to go, so I will be bringing him anyway since I cannot fly alone. I figured it couldn't hurt to see if he could not have to stay in the hotel all night. I do not technically need him for the event, since I'll know every guest, and I will be drinking pretty heavily to cope, but getting to spoil him with a bow tie, dancing, and steak sounded like the perfect reward for helping me on my flight. Several times, I emphasized that I understood it was an odd request, and she could say no if she wanted. She was emphatic that he could come. She said even if I found a date, he could come. I was so excited. For once, I felt seen, I felt cared about, I felt valued, and then I got a call from my dad. No one wanted to make things awkward, but the mother of the bride was not okay with a dog being at the venue. I explained that he is a trained service animal and will not interrupt the ceremony in any way, and I'd of course remove him if he did. Still, he said they didn't like it. I was so tired of hearing everyone else's words through my father. He won't be around forever, and sooner or later, they will have to start talking to me. I had one request: let the bride tell me. When I asked her, she said yes, and until she told me she changed her mind, I was under the assumption he could go. Well, I never heard back. My dad kept dropping hints when I call him, but I told him what my expectations were. When I RSVP'd, I put my dog as my +1 on the response to let them know I wasn't backing down this time. At this point, I didn't even care if she said he couldn't go. I just wanted to hear it from her. The next morning, I woke up to an email from my father. Not even a text, a dang email explaining that my niece didn't want to be the bad guy, but my dog was not welcome at the wedding. He said he was sorry, but he could still come with me to the hotel if I wanted. Something inside me broke, I think. I think I realized this is truly a helpless case. They are never going to respect me the way I crave them to. To this day, Not one of our conversations has been started by them. I always initiate, and now, the one time I request a direct contact, I get an email. Family means everything to me. Over the last few years, I've redefined what a family can be, and if right now, my family needs to be a very damaged orphan and their service animal, I'm grateful I have that much. So, I'm going to the wedding, and then I'm never going to talk to any of them again. And the sad part is, I don't even think they're going to notice.
Generally calm people. What made you lose your absolute crap that time? My son was maybe 8 months old and had recently been diagnosed as profoundly deaf. Deaf kids will often inhale to make vibrations and noise that they can somewhat hear for stimulation. We were on pins and needles as I had just lost my job and our insurance, and the cochlear implant surgery was going to cost us $170,000. We'd have to sell the house and one of the cars. We needed a break and our in-laws took us to the food court at a local mall. Our boy started to inhale and gasp. He needs a beating. An obese 20-something said no so quietly to her friends at the table next to us. I rarely curse in public and am generally non-confrontational, but a stream of insulting profanity issued from my mouth for a good 10 minutes that would have put a sailor to shame. I found it couldn't stop and it got on the verge of Bukowski poetry. I insulted her, her mother, her weight, and her pinched-faced friends. I launched into the smell of her twat, how obese she was, how she'd only be able to reproduce with a blind intoxicated moron with a death wish, as she was uglier than the devil's a-hole on fire with the crap of hell. And it only progressed from there. Female Lee Ermey's Marine drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket would have told me to tone it down a bit. I told her he was deaf and that we couldn't stop it, and this was a goddamn food court in a pissant southern town filled with pissant inbred mother effing hell spawned redneck ignorant mutant troglodytes that embarrassed normal troglodytes. The food court was silent and all the eyes were upon us. And then it progressed from there. She got up and left crying. I can honestly say the whole rant was involuntary, like a puss-filled boil popping and draining in a torrent. I had never done anything like this before and have not done it since. I feel bad for her to this day. What was a Christmas bonus you got from your company that made you speechless? I was downsized from a company I had been with for a pretty long time. Every year I would work really hard to make my goals so my bonus would be maxed. The cap was $1,000. The CEO of the company had 4 houses, several race horses, and 3 private jets. The company made a ton of money. I moved on to another, much smaller company about the middle of September the same year. Needless to say, my bonus that I had been working for most of the year evaporated. I didn't give it much thought beyond just being grateful I found another job that paid me equally. Christmas came around and I didn't think much about it because nobody had ever mentioned anything about bonuses and I had only been there about 4 months. The last payday before Christmas, the CFO popped in and just casually asked everyone if they'd received their bonus, told everyone not to eat too much, and he'll see us all next year. I didn't even bother to look up. During lunch a coworker asked me what I was going to do with my Christmas bonus. I told her that I didn't get one and that was to be expected since I had just been there a short time. She told me I should check my bank because the CEO was very generous and isn't the type to leave someone out. So, I checked. There was my paycheck direct deposit and holy crap, another deposit for $10,000 from the company. I later found out that mine was a gesture compared to some others. I've been there 8 years and counting now. The cash bonuses fluctuate more now than they did back then, but I've never gotten anything disappointing. I'll be there the rest of my life. Thank you for reading. Have you ever gotten an amount of money like this and had a similar reaction?
Becoming single was the absolute best thing that has ever happened to me. I couldn't even go anywhere by myself at night, to a gas station or anything. Everything in the apartment we shared was gray. I've never been able to express myself because we had to agree on everything and nothing could be girly. I broke up with him in January, which took a lot of determination, and he threw everything I owned on the front lawn. At the lowest point in my life, sleeping on a friend's couch, I decided to do something crazy. I got on Zillow and looked at places for sale in my hometown. I found a historic farmhouse that needs a lot of restoring for an insanely cheap price, with a lot land. Now I'm home, I can breathe, and I can literally do anything to my house that I want to. I bought classy, yet fun tile for my bathroom that has flowers all over it. I painted my bedroom purple. I'm doing a decidedly 70s theme in my kitchen and I just put stick-on vinyl all over my fridge with huge sunflowers on it. Like, I'm going wild. I can leave my house at any time and come and go as I please. I can go to Walmart at 2 a.m. on a Saturday for Ben & Jerry's if I have a random craving, and no one is going to scream at me and me for it. It may sound dumb to some, but it just made me break down in happy tears after bouncing all around my living room to classic rock. I'm just loving life.
Are you still selling the iPad? Yes. Sell for $100? Sell a brand new, never opened $400 iPad for $100? No. Come on. If you're selling it, it must be broke so it can't be worth more than $100. I already told my kid he could have it. Well, go ahead and untell your kid cause he ain't getting it. Why are you video calling me? I want you to tell my kid to his face that he won't be getting any presents this year because what pregnancy scare permanently scarred you? My pregnant girlfriend doesn't want to keep our girlfriend and is giving me full parental rights. My girlfriend is 28 weeks pregnant. She's not keeping our baby for many reasons. But to keep this post short, I don't want this to be a long-winded post. We are still young in our 20s and she has this unbelievable opportunity overseas and she's not going to miss it for anything. She just doesn't want children. It's fine, it's her choice. Her first choice was going through adoption since there's a long list of couples wanting a newborn and she was already looking up agencies. But I told her I don't feel comfortable with strangers raising our daughter and I want our daughter. She was hesitant at first because she doesn't believe in one-parent households, but she changed her mind and she's on board with letting me have full rights to my daughter, and she's going to sign off all her rights over to me. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a single dad and I'm thrilled. I haven't told anyone else other than my parents and they are excited to be grandparents. We actually have a scheduled C-section for 36 weeks of pregnancy. I pray everything goes well for both the mother of my child and my daughter. My girlfriend and I are splitting up. We're pretty much already broken up since the second trimester. It sucks because we've been together for a really long time, but this is the best thing we can do for both of us with these difficult circumstances. I'm tearing up as I write this, but I know everything will be okay with God having my back. My life is changing dramatically. I'm losing the love of my life, but I'm gaining a lot at the same time, my daughter. I have a lot to be thankful for.
Runaway brides of Reddit, what's your story? On my 18th birthday, my boyfriend proposed to me at my party, in front of all of my family and friends. I said yes mostly because I was too embarrassed to say no. We had been dating for 2 years, but I was just about to start university. I wasn't ready at all. I asked later, when we were alone, if we could have a long engagement, at least a year or two, and he agreed. We told our families and friends we would be waiting to get married. Less than 3 months later, his mom and my mom took me out for lunch and decided to take me to look at wedding dresses, because it's never too early to start planning. When I saw a really lovely dress that was on sale, my fiancé's mother insisted on buying it for me. Their family was quite wealthy and had set money aside for all of my fiancé's milestones, education, first car, wedding, etc. She told me they were happy to cover the major costs as they were the ones who wanted a big wedding, and joked I could pay her back for grandchildren. A few weeks later, his mom introduced me to a friend who was a florist. Next thing I know, I'm looking at bouquets and discussing table arrangements. Then my fiancé starts talking about venues for our wedding, saying we need to start planning so we can find the perfect place. By this point, I'm truly panicking. I'm just a few months into university. I haven't even fully decided what I want to do with my education. Now I'm choosing venues for a wedding that's supposed to be years away. A wedding that's suddenly looking like the nuptials of a minor royal. I tried talking to my fiancé, but he just wouldn't listen. We saw a venue we liked, but they had no availability for almost 2 years. So we booked it and I could finally breathe again. I had 2 years to get ready for my big fat crazy wedding. Then the venue had a cancellation, less than 6 months away, and my fiancé accepted it without telling me. Just canceled our future date and took the one that was now available. Then he arranged the entire wedding with the help of his mom and mine, damn her helicopter ways, before telling me. When he told me everything was booked, I went mental. His reaction was that he'd gone with all of my choices: re-catering, venue, flowers, etc., and so I should be grateful that he dealt with all the stressful stuff. All I had to do was turn up. When I explained that I didn't want to get married in 6 months' time and that this was the 3rd or 4th time I told him I wasn't ready for marriage yet, he told me I was being childish and that the invitations were at the printer, so it was too late to change my mind. I finally realized that he was manipulating me, so I gave him the engagement ring back and told him I didn't want to see him anymore. I've told my family and friends, cried a lot, changed my number because he wouldn't stop calling, etc. 2 months later, my mom got a call from his mother because she hadn't been able to get in touch with me to arrange dress fittings and finalize bridesmaids. He hadn't told them we split up. My mother explained everything to his mother and figured that was that. The following week, she had the audacity to present my family with a bill for half of what they had paid out for the wedding. It came to thousands of pounds. They booked everything, right down to the cake and the favors, without telling me, and wanted me to pay.
I took one for the team and dated a fat girl. Said girl is now my wife and she just found out why I agreed to go out with her. 2 years ago, I was at a party with a friend of mine named Joshua. Josh suddenly spotted 2 girls. The one he was interested in was this pretty blonde, while the other was her beluga friend. Josh turned to me and urged me to be his wingman by taking one for the team and distracting her friend while he chatted with the blonde. After a little back and forth, I decided to just do it to be a good friend. So we made our way over and made our move, where I would go in first and start chatting with the friend while Josh began flirting with the girl he was interested in. Again, this friend I was talking to was by no means unattractive in the face, just a beluga. I thought she was very sweet, even though I was just talking to her out of obligation. It didn't really matter anyway, cause ultimately the girl Josh was into already had a boyfriend apparently and had seemingly brushed him off, with him eventually patting me and on the back to signify I didn't have to chat with her friend anymore. So I decided to politely end the conversation, however, not before she asked for my Instagram, which I decided to give her. I didn't really think much of it at the time, and I was certain I would never see her again. However, a couple days later I ran into the same girl in my school's campus store. I didn't really recognize her at first, but she seemed to know me immediately. We decided to chat for a bit, and I was reminded of her name, Megan. Anyway, it was really just small talk until Megan suddenly seemed a little awkward. I asked her if everything was alright and she replied that nothing was wrong, but she wanted to know if I wanted to go out with her sometime. This actually came as a shock to me, as it was the first time a girl had ever made the first move and asked me out. So, even though she wasn't really my type at all at the time, I said yes. And that was probably the best decision of my life. Me and Megan really hit it off, and before long we were in a serious relationship. Any qualms I had about her weight were gone immediately after the first time we had intimacy, as I actually found her body to be really soft and comforting. More to play with, as I've always said. I had never felt so relaxed cuddling with someone before I met her. And there was a lot to cuddle. We've been dating for 2 years now and I absolutely love her. She's my everything, and I have even been thinking of proposing as soon as we are both done with school. Everything was perfect, until last month. Last month, we hosted a small get-together just for a few friends who were also in relationships, like a couple's game night sort of thing. It was here where Josh, who has been my good friend for years now, was pretty intoxicated, and made a joke about how if he had never forced me to take one for the team back then I would have never found the love of my life. The joke didn't really register to me as anything negative and I was also out of it, so I just laughed it off. Megan was cuddled up next to me on the couch though, and asked what Josh meant by that. I told her nothing, but Josh, being the intoxicated idiot that he was, elaborated and told her the story about how we met through my perspective at the time. Megan just said oh, and didn't really react, so I figured she just brushed it off. However, the rest of the night she seemed kind of distant and even a little sad. Finally, once everyone had left, she let it all out and started crying. She was essentially in shock because this whole time she thought I approached her because I was interested in her, and learning it was because I was forced to seem to bring back old insecurity within her. It doesn't help that she's actually gained weight since back then, and now is truly big, even though I don't really have any problem with that and have told her that multiple times. More to cuddle and more to love. I immediately gave her the full story, about how I fell for her right after that, and I have loved and adored her ever since. She seemed reassured and we even cuddled the whole night after that. Since that night though, she's been acting differently. It's like she's lost her confidence around me. She only wears large, baggy clothing even though she used to never before. She refuses to change with me in the room and hardly eats in front of me. Before, I used to playfully tickle her stomach sometimes and she'd always smile and play along. Now she seems insecure when I so much as accidentally graze it. She also refuses to have intimacy without a shirt on. I miss seeing them rolls jiggling sometimes. So far I sat her down multiple times and explained that her body is incredibly attractive to me and there's no one more beautiful in my eyes than her. But it's like she doesn't believe me. Lately I've been thinking about offering her to come to the gym with me, but I'm scared she may be more insecure at that suggestion. When was getting detention in school worth it? My senior year, our boys basketball team is in the playoffs playing the number 1 seed. They were much bigger, faster, and stronger than us. We didn't have size, but we made up for it with good ball skills, shooting, and defense. We tied the game with about 8 seconds left. As they're coming down the court with the ball, their point guard dribbles the ball off his foot. It's about to roll out of bounds when our MVP grabs it and takes it in for the easy layup. Time expires. Game over. We win. Biggest upset in Class A state history. No, the ref on the opposite baseline says our guy kicked the ball and the opposing player in the process. Their ball, double bonus, we're F. The thing is, our guy wasn't even close and it started retreating to set up a perimeter defense in order to stop penetration and force a longer shot. It wasn't even close. Of course, everyone goes ape poop and there is a meeting among the refs. The original call stands. Everyone is booing their faces off, and our coach begins arguing the call with one ref while the kid buries his foul shots. To top it all off, there was only 3 seconds put back on the clock, so now it's a question of how much time, if any, goes back on the clock. Ref says no more extra time, and as they are fixing the clock, it starts. Flashback to a chant I started earlier in the year. It goes like this: oats and beans and oats. I know, it makes no effing sense, but it was different and fun and whatever. So I start this chant, loud, literally screaming at the top of my lungs. Within about 10 seconds, our entire bleachers section is wailing and the students all come as close to courtside as possible with me and just start screaming oats and beans and oats. It was so loud that no one could communicate on the court. Imagine about 400 people, top of their lungs, high school gymnasium. Then our bench players start in. It was effing epic. The refs keep trying to wave us off and are blowing their whistles like wild so they can confirm the clock is right and our game is over. The ref in question turns to the scoreboard guy and gives a "that's it" type of motion. We're still going nuts with oats and beans. The refs are trying to leave the court and our bench stands up to block the entrance to the locker room. We storm the court, surround them, and just oats and beans at loud as F. They push through us and into the locker room. But it didn't stop there. About 100 students followed them into the locker room, oats and beansing it all the way. We followed that fare out to his car and never stopped. He retired after that season. I was suspended for 3 days for inciting a riot after the guy threatened to press charges for psychological abuse. The best part, the superintendent comes to my house on the last day of my suspension. My parents were pissed, but I was a senior, good student, going to college, etc., so I didn't get it too bad. Superintendent goes on to sit us all down and tell us how lucky I was that there wouldn't likely be legal repercussions and whatever. I go to my room so he can talk to my parents alone. Then my mom calls me back down to say goodbye. He shakes my mom's hand, my dad's hand, then mine and says, "Son, you're going to change the world." At the end of the year, I was given a $2,000 Spirit Scholarship and the entire school chanted oats and beans and oats when they announced my name at graduation.
Your date is a 10, but it has one thing you don't like that is enough to make you lose interest/walk away. What would that thing be? Once a man started singing to me on our first date after asking me if like Disney, then saying really intensely that I know the woman I end up with will love Disney as much as I do. Then he started singing A Whole New World really loudly in the restaurant we were in and everybody was staring and the waitress ran over and told him he needed to stop as he was disturbing other tables, and his response? "These people are lucky they aren't having to pay for a performance like this." If I could have melted under the table I would have. I actually put my mask back on just to be as unrecognizable as possible. I left before our food came and he actually tried to run after me and kiss me. I like Disney. I don't like crazy people.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Mr. Bond. I'm going to stick you in a spacesuit with a radio and strap you into one of my cars. Then, while mankind watches, I'll launch you into space. The last thing you'll hear before leaving this Earth forever will be their applause. What, are you really expecting some sort of villain monologue, where I reveal my evil plan in the most dramatic way possible, allowing you to escape? I don't think so, Mr. Bond. Agent 7 tested the restraints carefully, under Alon's careful gaze. They were tight, maybe too tight. Still, he kept cool, smirking slightly. Do you really expect me to understand why you're doing this, Musk? No, Mr. Bond. I expect you to die. Shouldering his flamethrower, the eccentric billionaire exited the cockpit. The door shut with a pneumatic hiss, and the secret agent leaped into action, muscles straining as he popped free of his bonds. He wasted a second ensuring the discreet recorder in his Oxfords was secure before turning his attention to the door. It had never meant to keep someone locked inside. Weight restraints meant that SpaceX hadn't done much to reinforce it. Still, Bond couldn't get through. The radio turned on, a burst of static before Alon's voice came through. The gloat was gone, replaced with a twinge of sadness. Mr. Bond, if you do meet up with the mothership, tell my girls I'll be home soon.
I am taking a poopy woman. My wife and I bought our first house shortly after our wedding. Everything went smoothly and we enjoyed our time as newlyweds. Of course, as the honeymoon phase began to fade, some minor issues started to emerge. For her, the first one was the typical guy on the toilet problem. So, sometimes I spend quite a bit of time on the toilet. It's all legit though, I'm not just scrolling on my phone. I mean, I also do that, but I'm also doing what I'm supposed to be doing as well. Anyways, my wife started to pick up on how long I was spending in the bathroom and commenting on it. This was exacerbated with some unlucky incidences of her asking when I was coming out just as I was standing up and about to flush the toilet, so it seemed like I was just standing there until she said something and flushing to fake like I just finished. For context, I eat a lot. I usually eat about 3,000 calories a day, give or take a few hundred, and I'm a thin frame guy, 160 pounds, 72 kilograms, give or take, and about 6 feet 5 inches. Back then I was still getting used to the bowel movements associated with eating that much, and they tended to come at random times in varying amounts. My wife, though, didn't believe me. Her diet was much less structured than mine, and she had no notion of what was going on in that room for so long. This culminated in a few arguments, with her accusing me of wasting time in the bathroom on my phone and myself insisting that I was indeed pooping. They were mostly joke arguments, but I really wasn't wasting time and was actually a little offended that she wouldn't believe me. So I decided I would get a little revenge and clear my name in the process. So the next time I was in the bathroom and my wife was in earshot, I began loudly announcing the following at the appropriate intervals. Poop is currently exiting my butthole, shortly followed by poop has finished exiting my butthole. I would do this 2 or 3 times for however long I was in the bathroom, during which I would be met with laughter or groaning from the other room depending on how many times I had made my announcement that session. After a few days of this, she would get grossed out and say okay I get it, and I would stop. Since then I have developed a much more predictable poop schedule, but I no longer get questioned as to my goings-on in the bathroom behind closed doors.
I gave my husband an ultimatum. Either he cuts off his late wife's family, or we call off the wedding and go our separate ways. I, 25 female, am getting married to my fiancé, 29 male, in May. When we first got together, he told me that he was married from 20 to 22 years old to his high school sweetheart. We met when he was 25, but she passed of sepsis from a botched surgery. He didn't cope well and stayed in contact with her family, namely her father and 2 sisters, 19 and 24. It was a soft spot for me for a while at the beginning, because there was so much history they had that we would not have, and it was tough knowing that she was all around him. I never told him and decided to work through it on my own, especially with the fact that he would often spend time with her family during our relationship. Her birthday, their anniversary, and anniversary of her death, he'd spend the day with her family. It was uncomfortable at first knowing the man I loved was reminiscing about love he had with someone else, but I kept trying to see it from his perspective, and the last couple years I am completely secure in our relationship, and it doesn't bother me much anymore. Well, he proposed this time last year and I was over the moon. I love this man with all my heart, but I recently learned that he never told them that we got engaged. I've been trying local coffee shops the past few months rather than my usual run, and tried a new one. His late wife's sister worked there, and other than being awkward, she did a double take of my engagement ring and looked really unhappy. I didn't mention it and left. My fiancé told me that she kept messaging him on social media about it, and I wasn't happy that he kept it a secret. He apologized and was very depleted by it all. He said that he didn't want to hide me, but he didn't want to hurt them either, and that both of us were a huge part of his life. I understand that and let him off the hook slightly, just told him to be upfront with them from now on. That was that. At least so I thought. A week ago, on Sunday, I got a message from the 24-year-old asking if I was happy with myself, that I would never replace his late wife, and that if she was still alive he'd choose her over me every time. She even said that he only kept me around for my money and something to stick his schlong in. I ignored it, but I can't say that it didn't affect me. When you're in my position, all these points are ones you have to work through, and it's not easy to get over those insecurities. It feels like a knock in the teeth when they're used against you. I mentioned it to him and he comforted me and reassured me. He said he'd set boundaries with her, I'd never have to hear from her again. Fine by me. That was until I found my car with "whore" and "grave robber" smeared in red paint on the side of it. I had saved for this car for a year and it was expensive, very expensive. The tires were slashed and the windows cracked. I asked the store a few doors down for their CCTV camera footage of that night, but it was blurry and didn't catch much. It did manage to catch half a license plate though, and the color and make of the car. It was his late wife's youngest sister's car. I told him I was filing a police report and he asked me to hold off until he talked to them first. I told him no, but I would if they paid for the damages and apologized to my face. He set up the meeting for last night and it didn't go well to say the least. Everyone was shouting. The sisters told me they, yes both of them, had nothing to be sorry for and that I should leave their family alone, including my fiancé and their family. He told them that it wasn't fair to him to be lonely forever and that he'd hoped they'd be supportive of him finding love again. They told him he was betraying his late wife and that he never loved her if he'd marry someone else. They didn't have a problem with him having a new girlfriend because he'd realized she was the only one for him and get tired of me. Now that hadn't happened, they were putting their foot down. The youngest told him to tell me that they were right and that he'd never love anyone like his late wife. My fiancé broke down at the table. I picked him up and made us leave. I told them I'd be filing a report and suing for damages, and the next time they saw us would be in court. When we got back and calmed down, I gave him an ultimatum. Either he cuts contact or we call off the wedding and go our separate ways. I wasn't going to live my life with this harassment and someday subject my children to their bullying. He said they would never bully a child, but I shot him down and said he didn't expect any of this either. He called their father, who was fairly chill about it all but still defending his daughters. They say I shouldn't control him and that I'm horrible for cutting them off. I don't know what to do. I can't live like this, and I don't think I should have to just because we're getting married. Small update to clear some things up before I have a discussion with my fiancé either later today or tomorrow about my ultimatum. I didn't sleep at all yesterday or the night before, for obvious reasons. There's a ding on my phone at least once an hour from them saying one thing or another, mainly the 19-year-old, and I don't know what they've told people, but I've got a message from one of their uncles and grandparents calling me horrible stuff too. So obviously they've been spreading what's happened this week and twisting it. I haven't blocked them because I want to gain as much evidence as I can for the inevitable case. Regardless of any outcome with my fiancé, I will be suing and filing a criminal case for harassment and vandalism and looking for a restraining order. I just haven't had the mental fortitude to do so yet. I'm hoping my fiancé will help me. I haven't spoken to my fiancé since the argument at the table, other than to tell him they go or I do. It was my choice to give him a couple days space to come to terms with everything, and I will contact him when I'm ready. All of this, from the first message till now, has been a week. It's a huge weight to contemplate leaving people you've known for 15 years and who you grew up with. He did set hard boundaries with a sister from the coffee shop as I've seen the messages. He said, paraphrasing, "You have no right talking to my fiancé at all if this is how you're going to behave. She doesn't deserve this and you've gone too far. Why are you being like this?" And she responded with more name calling and back and forth. He ended by saying not to message me again and to make sure everyone else does the same. I was happy with that. At this point, only one person in that family had an issue, to my knowledge, so it was silly to have him cut all of them off. It may not be enough for some, but it was enough for me to feel safe and comfortable. For those saying he needs therapy and counseling, he's already getting it. He's been getting it since before we even started dating after an incident at work. I don't know about any of their family though. The first time I had a conversation with any of them was that night. Some people are wondering what his late wife died of, and it was a botched weight loss surgery where she died of sepsis. People were wondering if he was somehow the reason behind the surgery, hence the family's insane reaction, but he was not in the slightest. He likes bigger women and wouldn't pressure something like that onto her, speaking from experience. I also want to clear up the not calling the police about the car thing. It was entirely my idea to not file charges in exchange for a face-to-face apology and damage payment. He only wanted me to wait so that he could talk to her to see if she regretted it, and then have her father pay the damages. At the time, we thought it was just the 19-year-old that smashed up my car, not both daughters. Neither of us wanted to ruin her life. When I found out it was both of them, it was full steam ahead. Thank you all for your messages, and hopefully I'll have a positive update for you tomorrow.
My awful girlfriend said that she never met someone who she loved as much as her ex and that she wished they did not break up. So I packed my things and left her. My girlfriend and I have been together for about 4 years. She used to be close friends with her ex, however, he tried to make a move on her while she and I were together. So she cut off their friendship. They knew each other for about 10 years, they were high school sweethearts and stayed together throughout college, but they broke up because he did not want kids. He died recently, and my girlfriend was invited to the funeral. While I wasn't happy to see my girlfriend cry about this guy, I swallowed my emotions and offered my full support. She asked me to come with her. Here's where things get messy. She kept talking about how she wished they had never broken up in the first place, and that she'd never met someone who she loved as much as him. She made a speech about how she says that if things had been different, they'd be a happy family with children. I had to force myself not to say anything then. We went back home, and she hasn't said anything about what she said. It's been a week since the funeral itself. Truth be told, I've been hesitant to talk about this to my girlfriend because she's still depressed. She's not talking to me at all, and I've been taking care of everything around our place. She's just been lying in our bed. I've tried to talk to her, but she just shuts me out. I've been reflecting on our past relationship and realized a couple of things. My girlfriend was never as passionate with me as she was with her ex. She never did anything as romantic or thoughtful for me when compared to her ex. For example, she's never gone traveling for more than 3 days with me. But she traveled often with her ex, sometimes for years. I was simply told to get over it, and that each relationship is different, and people said things like, if she wanted to be with her ex, she would be. Then, I did talk with her. She refused to at first, by not responding to me, but when I told her I was leaving, She finally said something to me. I told her that I feel like crap ever since she said those things at the funeral. How I feel like she would rather be with her ex than me. That I felt like her second choice. She started to yell at me, calling me selfish, and that she's lost one of the most important people in her life, and I shouldn't make this about me. I was too tired to try to yell back. My things were already packed up. My Japanese girlfriend doesn't know I speak Japanese. You won't believe what she said in front of me. About 6 months ago I met this wonderful Japanese girl in uni. She had attended an international school in Japan and her dad had worked in the US for 20 years, so she maintained native level English and was able to study abroad here in the US very easily. Anyway, we hit it off really well and have a ton of things in common and became very close over the past few months. We often hang out at each other's places to watch anime or play video games, but so far it has been a very friendly and platonic relationship. Recently, I've begun to develop feelings for her, but I haven't really been able to muster up the courage to ask her out yet. I've been shot down several times in the past, so I've been very hesitant to going through confessions and heartbreak all over again. What I didn't tell her was that I had been learning Japanese on and off for about 6 years now. I'm very self-conscious and unconfident about my abilities, and the topic of me speaking Japanese never really came up, so I never mentioned it. I'm not exactly fluent, but I can understand a fair bit, and even though my speaking skills aren't very good, I can get around Japan perfectly fine, having spent a month there for travel. I also scanlate, provide free translations online, for manga on the side every once in a while to keep my language skills up, but I never really told her about it either. A few weeks ago we were watching together when she had to take a call from her mother and excused herself to the kitchen to speak with her. I decided to play around on my phone while waiting, but I couldn't help but overhear the conversation she had with her. Based on her responses, her mother was essentially teasing her for me being her boyfriend and why she hasn't asked me out yet. I overheard her say something along the lines of, "I want to confess, but I don't want to get rejected. I'm still thinking about when and how I'm going to do it." Naturally, I became very excited. I tried to keep a straight face and not ask about it, but my heart was beating out of my chest at that very moment. I didn't want to pry and decided to just wait until she would just bring it up naturally when she's ready. Later on, she mentioned that her mother would be coming into town on a Saturday to bring some stuff over. We are usually at each other's places every weekend for a brief period of time just to get caught up with the latest anime episode. Last weekend was the premiere of a new season for an anime called Kaguya-sama Love is War, which we had planned to watch together. I told her no worries, I will just be in and out of her place so that I don't intrude on her family time. While watching the episode at her place, her mother ended up coming in early, so I had no choice but to say hi. I don't really know what came over me, but when her mother introduced herself to me in Japanese, I also responded back in Japanese. Back when I was visiting Japan, I got very accustomed to Japanese greetings when I met up with friends over there, so when I met her mom the instinct immediately came back to me. She was an incredibly nice and polite person, and we had a full conversation about my major and future plans, etc. I looked back at my crush, apparently wide-eyed for me speaking Japanese to her mom, and I decided to excuse myself so that she could have some family time. Later in the day she texted me that she didn't know I speak Japanese, and I replied, "Well, you never asked." This was apparently the worst response I could have given because she got very angry. I didn't think this would be a huge deal, but I guess it did reveal that I understood what she was saying when she talked about her feelings for me to her mom over the phone. She ended up getting very upset about hiding an important detail from her, which I didn't think would make her so angry at me. She felt betrayed that I kept a secret like this from her for so long, and I tried to apologize, but she doesn't want to speak to me right now, and I feel like I just blew my chances. Do I say sorry, or let it just cool off? I don't feel like I did anything wrong, as I feel like me being able to understand Japanese shouldn't be a huge deal, but she's still upset with me and doesn't want to talk.
My mother is blaming me for my sister's suicide attempt. My sister cheated on her fiancé of 3 years with a man in his late 60s while on a cruise that I was also on. While on the cruise, I caught her cheating and she begged me to stay quiet about it. I eventually told 2 of my friends because I couldn't hold it in any longer. Her fiancé ended up finding out because of me. We had a family dinner with my parents, my sister, and her fiancé at a small restaurant. While waiting for our food, I went to use the restroom and I ran into one of my friends in the bathroom. We talked for a while. And coming out of the bathroom, she asked me if it was awkward between my sister and I. We exited the bathroom into the small hallway. I said, "Yes, I feel like I have to be loyal to her because she's my sister, but I also feel like a terrible person for not telling him that she cheated." Turns out, my sister's fiancé overheard our conversation. When I came out of the hallway, I saw him talking on the phone in the waiting area, but thought nothing of it at the time. He broke up with my sister that same day. He accused her of cheating on him and mentioned what he overheard me say. In a desperate attempt to salvage their relationship, my mom drove my sister and I to his apartment. At his place, my mom explained to him that I lied for attention because I want him for myself, and my mom asked me to apologize. I did apologize, but then he asked me if I lied about the cheating. I wanted to say yes to save my sister's relationship, but he honestly looked so hurt already. I just couldn't bring myself to lie to him. I stayed silent and shook my head a little. There was a huge argument and he called the cops on us. Up until this morning, my sister and my mom refused to even look at me. They had not spoken to me since the whole incident. My dad was the only one who didn't blame me for everything. I know that I should have kept quiet about it and I feel guilty for ruining their relationship. I feel really bad because he actually made my sister happy. This morning around 1 a.m., My dad woke me up and he was crying. All I remember hearing was my mom sobbing from across the hallway. Everything from that point was just traumatic. When I entered my sister's old bedroom, she was lying on the floor, clearly having just attempted to take her life. My mom was crying while on the phone with 911 and she was yelling incoherent sentences. To make matters worse, while we were at the hospital, I accidentally tipped my mom off. I told my dad that I was thirsty and he was going to help me find some water. But my mom got really mad. She exploded on both of us, but mainly me. She basically blamed me for everything. She said if my sister doesn't make it then her blood is on my hands. And she also said that she wished it was me instead of my sister. My dad cut her off and yelled at her for saying those things, but she just argued back defending herself.
What is your "we never speak of this again" story? It was my ex-husband's lowest point in his life, but it was pretty funny from my point of view. My ex-husband had to have thyroid surgery a few years ago. We were still married at the time. He was having a lot of swelling, so they gave him some painkillers to take. Anyone who has taken this painkiller before knows that it might work very well, but it's not without side effects. One of those side effects happens to be constipation. We both knew this would happen because my husband and I are both doctors. I urged him to keep eating fiber or take a stool softener or something. He laughed it off. "Babe, my bowels are amazing. Nothing's going to happen to me." You might think that this was odd given that he was a doctor and fully knew that constipation was a side effect of the medication he was on. But if you knew him, you would not be surprised. My ex-husband is one of those guys that is good at almost everything and very competitive. He was a successful college athlete and went to one of the best med schools in the country and graduated with excellent grades. He also had a significant ego and felt that things that applied to normal people didn't apply to him because he was exceptional. And he was usually right. Just not this time. Days passed and he continued to heal, requiring less and less of the medication. I noticed his appetite hadn't picked up much, but I thought that might be because he just had surgery that night. I found him on the couch clutching his stomach and scowling. Immediately I knew what was up and said as gently as I could, "Now will you take the stool softener?" He finally relented and took the stool softener in hopes of producing a poop. Hours passed. Stool softeners don't work instantly, but that wasn't the only issue. Since he had refused to take anything before, the stool softeners were working against days of hardened poo clogging up his biological pipes. My husband began pacing and sweating. He has a pretty high pain tolerance, and I began to feel alarmed. I massaged his poor, distended tummy and tried our best to comfort him. He was always in really good shape and didn't have much subcutaneous fat, so you could literally feel the lumps of hard poo. After hours of stool softeners, tummy rubbing, and fluids, he started to really sweat. Now I was really worried. Suddenly he leapt up, ran into the bathroom, and slammed the door. I sat outside waiting for a noise. A fart, a wail, something. Finally, I heard him sob my name. I walked in, and my cool, aloof husband was bawling his eyes out, sitting on the toilet, and pushing on his stomach like an uncomfortable little kid. He turned green. And I immediately recognized that face. I had just enough time to grab a trash can to catch the vomit that came streaming out seconds before an enormous shark and a huge blast of diarrhea turd chunks. There was my confident surgeon husband crying, barfing, shitting, and hanging onto my arm for dear life. It was so painful to watch, and to this day, he says it's the only time he's truly been, and he made me promise that I would never tell anyone about his ordeal, and I kept it secret for a few years. But it was just too good to keep to myself.
The time I blackmailed my mum and it all worked out. One time I was late for school and my mum didn't like that, so she pushed me onto the ground and started slapping me, but she ended it with one hard kick. I'm not even gonna lie, out of the times this has happened before, the kicks were never this hard. It was so hard that she broke her foot. But anyways, after this I blackmailed her with it to not tell my dad and to buy me stuff.
What strange promises have people made and then lived up to? This is a true story about a British stand-up comedian named Russell Howard. One day, Howard receives a heartbreaking email from a random woman with a simple request. Her son, a 14-year-old boy, was dying of cancer and would Howard please consider paying him a visit? Howard, being the beautiful human being he is, of course said yes. When he arrived at the boy's house, Howard discovered that the boy, Darren, had a list of his all-time favorite jokes by the comedian. His most favorite of all was a sketch called Mr. Whiner, in which Howard, dressed in a 6-foot-tall whiner costume, would chase people around. Howard and Darren became fast friends. They shared the same sense of humor. They got on great. In or around the 5th visit, Darren had a simple request for Howard. Realizing his death was near and already making plans for his funeral, Howard was asked to attend. Darren, having a wonderful sense of humor, had organized for his dad to wear a Grim Reaper costume, carrying a side and pointing at anyone who coughed during the funeral. Howard thought this was great, terrible, but great, and started to realize there was a catch. He asked the boy what he wanted the comedian to wear, staring Howard dead in the eyes. Darren replied, "I think you know." And Howard did. Darren was given only 3 days left to live. After Christmas, with death at the door, Howard raided his 6-foot-tall whiner costume. He had made a promise and was going to stick to it. The doctors came back to Darren with some amazing and fantastic news. His cancer had gone into remission and Darren was in fact not going to die. Howard, when he received the news, was so delighted and grateful that he immediately asked Darren to join him on stage during a show in Bristol. Realizing there was a catch, Darren asked him what he wanted him to wear, staring Darren dead in the eyes. Howard replied, "I think you know." And Darren did. He wore a giant whiner costume. You can find the video online. It's equally heartwarming and hilarious. What is the most frightening thing you've seen that you cannot explain? I was alone in my car, driving home through a thunderstorm from my friend's house. It was around 11 p.m., and I was taking the winding back roads through the woods to get to my rural neighborhood. The rain was torrential, coming down in heavy sheets that made it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet in front of my car. I had a strange feeling that night. Maybe it was the storm, or the visibility, I couldn't quite place my finger on it. It was also a tumultuous time in my life, as I had lost my 16-year-old daughter 4 years back. She had gone hiking with her friends and got lost, and then passed away due to exposure before they found her. Even to this day, I still carry that pain with me. I shook off the paranoia, blaming my overactive imagination on reading too many scary stories. But suddenly, as I came around a sharp bend, I slammed on the brakes. There in my headlights stood the most terrifying sight, a ghostly pale figure in a long, dirty white nightgown with dark stringy hair covering her face. She was just standing there motionless in the middle of the road, unaffected by the pouring rain. When I peered out from behind her matted hair, staring straight at me. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. The wind whipped violently at the girl's nightgown, giving an otherworldly effect as it twisted unnaturally around her gaunt frame. I sat paralyzed in abject horror, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. After what felt like an eternity, I threw the car into reverse and spun the wheel sharply to get away from the terrifying apparition. I tore down the road as fast as the slick conditions would allow, watching fearfully in my rearview mirror to see if the ghostly figure pursued me. Once I turned onto the main road near my house, I finally felt safe enough to slow down. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I had just seen. I couldn't shake the vivid image of that pale young girl who looked like something straight out of a horror movie. When I got home, I locked the door and collapsed onto the couch, heart still pounding. I decided I would avoid that winding wooded road from now on, especially at night. I never wanted to lay eyes on that ghostly figure again. Later, I considered calling the police to report what I had seen. But what would I tell them? That I saw a ghost girl standing in the rain? They'd think I was crazy or drunk. For the next 2 weeks, I had a recurring nightmare where she turns her head, and instead of a ghostly stranger, I see my own daughter's face staring back at me. It got so bad that I went to see a doctor. They diagnosed me with early onset demon. What do most people not realize can seriously F you up? Lack of sleep. Fist fights. Like, people get it, but they don't. One punch is all it takes to get fucked up for life, if not die. Fall wrong. Smash your head on something. The punch itself. Dehydration. Cement dust. If you're ever around a construction site and notice cement dust in the air, mask up or move the fuck on. Silicosis. Bad news. Walking down the stairs with your hands in your pockets or without having at least one of your hands free to catch you if you fall. One of my high school teachers lost her husband because of this. When she got home from work, he was at the bottom of the stairs. He'd been carrying a basket of laundry down. She was pregnant at the time. If you are actually physically dependent on something, quitting cold turkey can definitely kill you. If you're at the point where you get the shakes or worse, please get medical help when you decide to detox. Exposing a child to a toxic relative. Forcing a kid to spend time with a horrible person just because they're related is terrible. Stop that shit. I hired a male babysitter to make sure my older son wouldn't have intimacy with a female babysitter, but I found out he was gay. Last week, due to work-related reasons, my husband and I were not going to be at home Friday night. Normally this wouldn't be a problem as my 16-year-old takes care of my 8-year-old when this happens, but he had soccer practice until 8 p.m., which means he was arriving home say 9. Too late. So we had to get a babysitter. Luckily for me, the school has a list of teens that are available for odd jobs and we could get one of them. Because we live a little bit far away and whoever came likely needed to stay the night, I decided no girls for obvious reasons. I know, sex should not be a taboo, but teenage hormones are teenage hormones, and modesty aside, my genes are good. My boy is quite handsome if I do say so myself, and I don't want to be a grandma before reaching the 50s. So we get a boy, a pretty decent young man a grade below my son, super friendly, with good references. Perfect in all ways. I left Friday night trusting my awesome mama ideas. Come Saturday morning 7 a.m. and things are weird. First of all, my teenage son is awake. He would never, ever, not in a million years wake early on weekends. Last time I saw him do that he was 10. And both guys were, I don't know how to explain it, but you could feel it. They looked uncomfortable when talking to each other during breakfast but at the same time wanted to talk. And in hindsight I can swear they were blushing like crazy. I didn't think too much of it until recently when I casually heard my son talking on the phone and he mentioned this kid's name, not at all common in our area. I also realized that this week he has been talking a lot on the phone. Normally he would just text. I know, it's all very vague, but while I never had the vibe my son could be gay is not entirely impossible. And I was sure something happened that night between them. A few days later, I was driving down the street past the park to do some groceries. What I saw almost made me throw up or crash my car. The boys were sitting on a bench at the park. Damn near eating each other's faces out. I didn't know what to do. I'll handle that later. At that moment, I had to get out before I started screaming. I guess my little plan against teenage love completely backfired. I sent a text to the wrong person and got a girlfriend. I was in high school, sophomore year, a young and virile 15-year-old, crushing on the cutest little girlie my pecker had ever seen. Let's call her Alyssa. We were in the same driver's ed class that year. I played some pretty strong games with her, which basically means I was nervous as hell around her. She knew I was into her, and she played coy about it all. So, we had a mutual friend we'll call Cece. I was chatting with Cece, talking about my plight. At the same time, I was texting Alyssa about some random homework stuff. I'm trying to remember what the message said, but it's been 8, maybe 9 years. Essentially it was like the following. I really like her. She's just about the sweetest girl I know and she's beautiful. It's so sad though, because she never sees herself that way. And it kind of kills me because if she saw how I see her she'd know. I sit with her every day just so I can be around her. You know, she has the cutest smile. And she has this lopsided smile that makes her chipmunk cheeks look even cuter. Damn, I just want to say something to her. I want her to know. And I hit send. And to my absolute horror I noticed it was sent to Alyssa. I freaked out and I threw my phone away from me, as if it burned me. There was no response for like 10 to 15 minutes. I was dying, and then I see there's a call coming in. It's Alyssa's ringtone. I picked up the phone and tried to play it as cool as possible. I was stuttering kind of. She asked me if that was about her and I said yeah. She then laughed and asked if it was meant for someone else. I could tell she received it pretty well. So we started joking, and then I asked her out, and she said yes. I was so happy. We dated for about 5 months and then she dumped me. We weren't very good together. We were friends and we had fun, but our chemistry just wasn't there, at least on her end. So she left me for my best friend at the time. I haven't talked to her since, but from what I have seen, she's doing pretty well. But she will always remain the one that got away from me. Update, my cancer survivor wife wants a hall pass. I received a ton of advice that I couldn't possibly respond to. I do appreciate the people who took time to offer advice in the comments or via PM. It has been an exhausting couple of days. I was hoping that my opposition to her plans would give her pause, but unfortunately that did not happen. I said I am a hard no, and I am not sure how I will feel about you, if you go ahead with it. I was met once again with this is for me, it will be one time. What can I say to help you deal with it? You'll get over it. We were meant to be regardless of the situation. Remarks leading up to Saturday. She left Saturday, ostensibly to meet her coworkers, but in reality F the guy. I asked her to text me when she was leaving for the bar, and when she did I asked her if she was really going to go through with this. After her response, I am not answering any more questions tonight. I will see you tomorrow. I blocked my wife. Then I did something either stupid or brilliant. I went to the bar where the get-together was happening. Well, not the bar but a transit bench across the street. I waited for a long time. It was running through my mind the leading up to this event, that I need to know who this guy was, maybe to compare myself against him. To see what he had that I do not. It was driving me crazy not knowing who he was and what was so special about him that she would ruin a marriage for. After what seemed like eternity, a woman that I recognized from my wife's office left the bar and got in a cab. Soon other people started filing out and a whole group came out and people were hugging a man and shaking his hand. I assumed that I had my guy. I didn't see my wife and had a brief thought that maybe she called it all off. I unblocked her and there were no messages. Everyone said their goodbyes and left. Dude was standing outside for a few minutes and then my wife came out. She looked around, took his hand and started walking away together. Of all the emotions I went through, trepidation, sadness, anger, it was disgust that really encapsulated the event for me. This guy was short, fat, and bald, all the things I cannot compete with. Ultimately, I felt like a creep for watching from a distance. I followed until they got to the hotel, and then turned around and went home. I woke up Sunday morning and put a lock on the master bedroom door. I moved her things to the spare room and left a note asking her to find other accommodations as quickly as possible. I visited another friend who is a lawyer and he gave me some sage advice and a couple of recommendations for divorce attorneys and made the introductions. My wife had been calling me numerous times since around 11 or so. Once blocked, the calls go to voicemail. I listened to the first couple but felt nothing but some satisfaction when she couldn't get through to me and she was obviously becoming concerned. I didn't want to go home but I left in such a hurry that I didn't plan an overnight properly. I got home around 9 and as per my buddy's advice, I recorded the interaction. I was halfway up the stairs when she came up from the family room asking what was going on. Could we talk? I thought we talked about this. I just answered with I am not interested in discussing this tonight and went to bed. After not getting a response from me through the door, she left me alone. I feel kind of like a child for not talking with her and shutting the door on her, but I just couldn't look at her. Monday I got up and ready for work. She was waiting for me and asked if we could discuss getting back to normal. I said, you have been doing all the talking for the both of us for the last week. Why don't you continue, and left for work. I have an appointment with the attorneys my friend recommended for this week.
What are the downsides of Zaza that people don't talk about? I smoked every day for about 10 years, minus about 6 months, and all that as I needed to be clean for a drug test for a job. In my opinion, the Zaza starts off amazing and fun, but after becoming a habitual smoker it turns into a crux that's hard to shake. It's not that it's super addicting, it's just nothing is as fun as being high, so you want to be high all the time. It dulls feelings but highlights feelings of existentialism which can sometimes be overbearing. I would also feel stuck in my life a lot, like it would be hard to make changes, but I would want better things for myself, but it always seemed impossible to achieve. I did have problems with breathing, but I have a history of asthma and took up Tai Chi to compensate, which I found really enjoyable, and it helped me to slow down greatly on smoking. The one most annoying thing with being a smoker is your tolerance level goes way up, so even though you are smoking you aren't getting that high you used to get, just a mind-numbing insomnia almost. I also had a loss of appetite over time and ate less. It also made me feel comfortable with where I was in life, and I had a lack of motivation, though some days like once a month or two it could really motivate you to do something, but that would wither away quickly. Overall I would recommend it only at
I decided to rope my sister's best friend. And she loved every minute of it. My sister's best friend is gay and has wanted to try out a man but didn't know how to get one, so they came into our house to discuss how she could find one. The plan is to have her dressed up as a proper young lady and get her to find a man. I watched them change the stud to a lady, and I got attracted to her. Every time I saw her change into a ladylike dress, I was thrilled. Her body was so beautiful that I just wanted to taste it. I know it's absurd, but I have no choice. I couldn't control it. I started peering at her in the dressing room, in the bathroom. I just enjoyed seeing her body. One evening, I found her with her legs wide apart on her bed as she began to do herself with a double-sized toy. Her womanhood juices filled up everywhere, and it was thrilling and exciting to watch. On her date night, I found the toy in her room with the juice all over. I inserted it into my mouth, and damn, it tasted good. I ran off to my room, and I made it a mental note to sneak it every night, just to lick off her aftermath from the toy. One night, my sister traveled, and it was just the two of us that were left. We began talking about love and men, and then she decided to go to bed. She moved into her room and slept off. She's a heavy sleeper, so I sneaked in. Her toy was beside her, so I guess she slept off while trying to go to town on herself. Her legs were wide open, and I could see her juice seeping. I parted them lightly, and I began to give neck. My tongue didn't stop as I lapped on like the cute dog I was. At first, I was scared she would wake up, but then she relaxed and shoved my head down to her sweet spot. Yes, like that, doggy, you can do better. Do it, yay, she said. I could guess she was dreaming of her dog, and I would love to be. I put my fingers into her womanhood. I was ready to risk it all, so I stood up and replaced my fingers with my toy, big and long. It filled her up completely, and her womanhood held onto it tightly. I began to do her slowly. As her waist was arched up, I crossed the finish line inside her and hurriedly cleaned off my toy with hers. The next day, she woke up energized and happy. Would I be the jerk for calling off a wedding because my fiancé is extremely frugal? I 31 struggle with my fiancé's 32 frugalness and not sure if I want to marry him anymore after 3-year relationship. I met my fiancé 3 years ago. He came out of an abusive marriage just 2 years before we met. One of her absolute abuses was financial. She bled him dry. Made him buy expensive jewelry only to give it away or break it after an argument. Designer shoes, clothes, big house cars. Caribbean trips. You name it, she made him pay for it. She also took him to the cleaners in the divorce. However, my fiancé is very well off. He makes far over 6 figures, almost 7. On top of that, he inherited a few millions from his grandfather and his parents gifted him and his siblings also a few cool millions. So yes, the financial abuse was bad, but he does not suffer financially. He has more money than he will ever need. So last year I moved into his house. I do not pay rent, but I split the bills and buy food. I pay for my own clothes and jewelry. I have a good job and I can take care of myself. However, things have been taking a turn for the worse and I feel miserable. His house was empty when I moved in. He had hand-me-down furniture. Maybe 3 forks and 2 knives. He wouldn't put on the heating so the house felt cold and moldy. He has no curtains, no decorations. His ex took everything not bolted down and he was too cheap to replace it. Just imagine $1 million house like that. I am grateful that I can live in his house. It is something I could never afford myself. But I didn't want to live in squalor. So I bought some kitchen supplies, some furniture. But at some point I realized I was dipping in my savings all the time and he did nothing. I looked into curtains, but those things are expensive. His house has so many windows it is crazy. I didn't want to pay for this anymore. I told him I needed a fund to furnish his house. He blew up at me that I was just with him for his money. I pointed out all the money I spend on his house. The gifts and the trips because he pays for nothing ever. Because he wants to be sure I am not here for the money. The fact is, if we break up I have nothing. The house is not mine. If I spend all my savings on his house I will be left with absolutely nothing. He wants a prenup and I am fine with that, but I can't help but feel used. Next to that, I am jealous of his ex-wife. I feel like she got treated and I am neglected. He proposed to his ex on a cruise with a $10,000 white gold diamond ring. I got the rhodium-plated Swarovski stuff that might cost like $100. The proposal was at a picnic in the park I organized, paid groceries for and slaved in the kitchen for. I almost said no out of pure disappointment. However, I am afraid to bring it up and to be called a gold digger. I don't want to be funding a millionaire's lifestyle. He loves everything as long as I pay for it. As soon as he has to pay, it is frivolous, unnecessary. I can live like a poor person by myself. At least the fact there are literal millions lying around doesn't hang over me to bum me out and I would just be paying for my own lifestyle. Would I be the jerk for calling off a wedding purely for financial reasons? Because I love this man, but I imagine our cheap wedding in contrast to his ex or extravaganza. Will our future kids be able to have some luxuries? Or only if I pay for it? What if I ever become a stay-at-home mom? Will I have to beg to put the heating on? I know the abuse is not made up. His family and friends told me separate stories of the abuse they witnessed. Not only did it confirm it, it showed me she was way more terrible than I thought. Like stealing heirloom jewelry of his grandma with Alzheimer right after she was widowed. Pretending she was gifted these things even though everyone knew grandma hated her guts. I did not realize or see he is doing the same to me as she was to him, and he is, subconsciously, punishing me for what was done to him. I am not trying to force a lifestyle in him where he was previously happy in. He told me prior to moving in that he left his house like this because he was depressed after his wife took everything, even the curtains, that it makes him sad and he wants a cozy home. He just didn't know where to start. His house is paid off, thanks to granddad. He isn't actually spending much on utilities either. House is very well isolated and has solar panels. It is weird to see how cheap being rich really is. I am not asking for designer furniture. IKEA all the way, and I have refurbished second-hand furniture myself. I am actually pretty thrifty. I see where my jealousy over the extra lifestyle might have triggered some people. Let me explain. A $10,000 ring is insane and stupid to me. I do not want that because I would fear for losing it every day. I don't need an over-the-top wedding, however, it almost feels like for her he did effort. Wanted to give her what made her happy. Put effort and thought in it. With me it almost feels like he wants to prove how little he can give me. He talked about how he would see the wedding and it is cheaper than my actually financially struggling cousin her wedding. I can't help but feel he wants to demonstrate how cheap he can treat me. And I already feel embarrassed about the family that would have been to both and I will feel like the discount wife. I don't like to say it but it feels like he gets on it to some extent. We are almost talking washing paper plates at this moment. Yes, I did discuss selling the mansion I really don't need and move to a more modest house. Especially knowing this is the house his ex picked. He doesn't want to do that. He loves this house. But I feel really intimidated living in a house I could never afford anyway. And so many large windows. Sheesh, I haven't talked to him yet but pause on the marriage and counseling is a must. I already am looking for IC because I realized I might indeed be too much of a people pleaser allowing him to control me with the ghost of his ex. I also am going to separate for a while. I am looking to rent something for a few months so I can get some space. Today I effed up by buying a doob tube and giving myself salmonella. I thought it would be a great idea to buy a bong after talking to a professional grass smoker friend, so I went out the next day and bought an acrylic bong and decided to use it. It blew my mind as the vapor was basically cold and I could really feel the grass working instantly. I ended up getting more blasted than I had ever been before. So I'm watching Hell's Kitchen and Gordon Ramsay is yelling at some guy for overcooking his steak and I'm really getting the munchies. I go to the fridge to look for protein but all I have is chicken so I decided to cook that. When I took out the chicken it wasn't the shape of a steak so I battered it with a pan to flatten it. You see, I like my steak medium rare so when cooking my flattened chicken I only cooked it for 1 minute on each side with salt and pepper. Thinking I had made a masterpiece I cut it up into thickish slices and served it with fries. I don't know if it was just the grass but this unknowingly raw chicken was the best chicken I've ever had in my life. It was perfectly warm but so juicy. The next day I'm feeling a bit cooked and can't remember much of what happened last night but otherwise fine. Then all of a sudden, as I'm watching TV I get mild stomach cramps so I wonder what I ate last night and it all comes back to me. I can't believe I tried to cook a chicken like a steak even if it was delicious. I didn't have any major symptoms for the rest of the day though, but in the middle of that night I woke up and realized I had crapped the bed. I had changed the bed sheets a few nights earlier so this was particularly disappointing. I had to replace my Egyptian cotton sheets as they were stained, but this was hard to do as I was solidly throwing up for the next 2 days. Moral of the story is cook your chicken properly. What has been the most heartbreaking thing you've personally witnessed? When I was a correctional officer, I would oftentimes escort inmates to and from the hospital for medical treatment. There was one inmate, Fredericks was his name, who had been diagnosed with a heart condition. He was about 50 years old and a born-again Christian, as many inmates are. He was always quoting scripture and seemed so sure about his place in heaven. Over a period of about 6 months he shed about 150 to 200 pounds. He went from being a relatively heavy-set guy to skin and bones. I would usually be the one to escort him to and from the hospital. Another officer and I would sit with him for 8 to 12 hours a day. At one point, he had to be transferred to another larger hospital, so I rode in the back of the ambulance with him while the other officer followed us in the prison van. I still remember the conversation we had to this day. I was known for always carrying Jolly Ranchers in my pocket. He asked me if I had any that I could share with him. I told him I didn't, but if I did I would certainly share them with him. That was against the rules, but I don't think anyone would have said anything about me sharing a piece of candy with a dying man. I could see his hands were shaking, and I could hear the handcuffs and chains clinking. We had to wrap the belly chain around him twice because he had become so thin. He looked at me and said, "I'm scared." I could tell he was holding back tears. I didn't know what to say so I just told him that he was going to be okay. After I got relieved from my post, I told him I would see him next week, as my days off were coming up. I never saw him again. He died a few days later. I heard the state buried him because no family ever showed up to claim the body. I wish I had been able to give him some of my candy. Today I effed up agreeing to watch my friend have sex. Today I messed up by agreeing to watch my friend make love. A few nights ago I, 22 male, showed up at my friend's, 25 male, apartment to watch him make love with his girlfriend, 22. It was an unforgettable experience for all the wrong reasons. Making love in front of someone else was a fantasy my friend and his girlfriend wanted to explore, but to complete the package, the two of them had to be more than two. My name was apparently the only name that managed to get 2 unanimous yes votes from my friend and his girlfriend during their selection process. I leaned towards saying no when my friend offered me the uncomfortable position of being the other person, but I accepted the role because my friend played his woman card and made it sound like it would be over in less than 10 minutes. I had one job, enjoy the show, but without touching my friend or his girlfriend. My presence was my only purpose. When I entered my friend's bedroom and approached my designated chair, I was prepared for an awkward night. My friend and his girlfriend are attracted people, but I've never been keen to see them exposed, let alone intimate. As soon as the kissing and touching turned into more, I was struggling to contain my laughter. It was a nervous reaction that was out of my control due to an unusual situation that was also unintentionally funny. Exhibit A, my friend was quiet, too quiet, mimes made more noise than him. Exhibit B, my friend's girlfriend must have been under the impression that I was a talent scout because literally any random touch from my vocally challenged friend, like his knuckle brushing against her knee or whatever, would prompt her to bite her bottom lip and be vocal like she was tasting a delicious dish for a television commercial. Exhibit C, my friend was unable to get a pivotal part of his anatomy to rise to the occasion because he focused too much of his attention on me when he noticed that I was fighting the urge to Laugh. I did my best to avoid eye contact since I was supposed to be watching something purposefully hot, not accidentally hilarious. Mid-top, my friend asked me what was so funny. I apologized and said my reaction was nothing more than nervous laughter, which was 90% true. The other 10% was me trying not to laugh at my friend being quiet while his girlfriend was gunning for best over-the-top performance at the Academy Awards, when my friend's girlfriend realized that I was indirectly distracting my friend. She unexpectedly wiggled my friend's softy and said, "Erecto patronum." That broke me. I laughed uncontrollably. My friend got annoyed and said, "Look what you've done." I thought he was talking to his girlfriend, but it quickly became clear that he was actually talking to me, based on his feedback. My childish reaction motivated his girlfriend to incorporate inappropriate Harry Potter humor when he was feeling vulnerable. He blamed me for everything that didn't go according to plan, including the fact that he was struggling to get it up. By the time he was done branding me the bad guy, he was no longer interested in continuing. I apologized again and explained that it was never my intention to laugh or become a distraction. It was involuntary. My friend suggested that we continue the conversation the next day. That was 3 days ago. My friend is still not responding to my messages or answering my calls. I get that I should have done a better job being serious, but I don't understand how all of this is on me though. Anyway, never watching friends make love.
What is the most disturbing secret you know, but can't say anything about? My friend and his wife just had a miscarriage. None of the women in their lives know, and always complain that she's been so emotional lately, and that she's turning into a bitch. They have openly debated stopping contact with her in front of me, and all I can really say is, maybe she's going through something and needs friends right now more than ever. I've never personally witnessed the aftermath of a miscarriage from this close before. It truly is life-altering.
Dear my husband's coworker, stop trying to spread your legs for my husband. I know you looked through this website after you got advice here telling you to come clean to me about your affair with my husband. I personally couldn't find a thread that fits the description, but could be the wrong sub or you deleted it, so if you read this and it sounds familiar then yes, it's about you. I have no plans of speaking to you in the future, but I want to make a few things clear. Yes, I do remember when we first met at the Christmas party and you kept trying to get my husband alone to talk. You pouted so much when he refused I thought you would quack. Do you remember how all of his colleagues were friendly with me? I remember when you approached my husband and I walking home from my birthday dinner. I'm pretty sure this was a coincidence, but seeing my husband practically jump away from you trying to hug him was the highlight of my night. I know my husband is hot, of course I know. I married him and had kids with him, but I bet you didn't know because you have only been at the company for a few months that your coworkers used to be my coworkers. I know all about you trying to get him alone after meetings, not only straight from my husband because you make him feel uncomfortable but also from them. Did you think he wouldn't talk to me after you accidentally sent him 2 provocative photos on 2 separate occasions? Did you think you could really get him? Did you look at his Instagram and think, wow, I want that life, I just need to lie to his wife and it's all mine? Do you think knocking on my door when I'm hosting a dinner party to hand me printouts of your conversations with him I would go off on the deep end and divorce him? I'm pretty sure HR has spoken to you already about your inappropriate behavior and misuse of his personnel file. I'm sure you are shocked maybe you didn't think my husband would report it. I don't know what repercussions you will get and I don't care. If you come near me, my husband, our kids or our nice home again, police will be called. A word of advice: if you're going to fabricate messages you might want to get rid of the wrong number or at least replace it with a name.
People who used to be vanilla, what transformed your intimacy life? To say I was timid in bed with my girlfriend was an understatement. I was about as vanilla as they come, and when it came time to do the deed I was eerily silent. My girlfriend always wanted me to experiment with freakier stuff but I was very shy. When I was little my aunt used to rope me and that turned me off intimacy for a while. When I first started sleeping with people I would have panic attacks and was softer than a fresh baked cookie. This habit of mine stopped when I met my girlfriend. She was the only one who was so damn good in bed that I was always to stay solid during the whole deed. However, despite how great the intimacy itself was, I was still shy. My girlfriend has tried everything. She would even do stuff like go down on me when I was playing FIFA in hopes of turning me into an animal. One night after we had done the deed she rushed out of the room and came back with her laptop. She showed me multiple toys for us to try. My aunt would rope me using toys and I told my girlfriend that using any toy would bring back vile memories. She kept looking and we found a freaky dice on cuteurges.com. This dice looked promising. You roll it and the side it lands on has a different forfeit, or thing to do. It seemed interesting and I was persuaded to buy it. The night it showed up we played a drinking game. Booze has been the one thing that has gotten me into the mood, so I figured I may as well try my best. We rolled the dice over and over and I started really enjoying it. My girlfriend had to forfeit the clothes thanks to the dice and so did I. The dice also made her go down on me for a minute and each time we rolled it we got more and more into it. This dice was really working its magic. The booze bottles kept emptying and the dice kept rolling. We were interrupted by her best friend giving her a call who happened to be drinking with a random guy pretty close to our apartment. The guy ended up leaving her and she called us hoping for a place to stay. This is when my life changed forever. My girlfriend says yes to her staying the night and she came over. As she was also boozed up, she asked my girlfriend and I what we were doing. My girlfriend, instead of answering, offered for her to join in. This is how I found out my girlfriend and her best friend are bi. Needless to say, thanks to this cute urges dice I ended up sleeping with them both multiple times that night. It was only in the morning when my girlfriend realized what had happened and went berserk at me and her friend. Apparently what we did was disgusting, even though she was a willing participant. She cursed the stupid freaky dice and kicked her friend out. We had a long talk where we agreed to stay together and perhaps involve third parties into our intimate life, but only if we planned to beforehand.
My husband gave me an STD and ruined my life, but then blamed it on me for being unfaithful. The craziest part is that I found out about all of this through a Facebook post. My husband and I have been married for 10 years and have 2 children together. He travels often. I also want to say that about 8 months ago I discovered that I was infected with an incurable STD. He blamed me for this, saying that I was the unfaithful one, even though I repeated multiple times to him that I had never cheated, but he wouldn't believe me. This alone was enough to hurt because I literally dropped out of college just to raise our kids, and on multiple occasions I had to work part-time jobs as well as take care of the kids, so that we could financially survive. Well, later that month, I was browsing Facebook in a mother's group. In that group it is for help with children, to ask for donations, share experiences and memes. A mother shared that she would give her husband a laxative tea so he wouldn't go to a soccer game the next day. It was all mockery and laughter in the comments of the post and telling her to update the result. I am a person who likes to read comments. Unfortunately I saw a profile that had a photo of a woman with my husband. I started watching and apparently they got married civilly. My husband created another profile but has a different name and surname. I think that child has a false last name because she uploaded a post when she went to register the child's birth certificate and placed the full name there as if she were proud of it. I posted it in the same group. Now that they give the option to post anonymously, several gave me advice and we deduced that possibly the other lady didn't know because of what she shared on her profile. I wrote to her and was surprised that the beach did know that he was married. They have been married for 2 years and their baby is approximately 14 months old. Although they are not technically married, their marriage is not valid. I want to just hire a lawyer, or even just divorce him, but as someone without a college diploma, and me relying on him for financial support, I can't do anything. Furthermore, now I am sure that he gave me the STD because he was the one cheating, and I feel like my life is falling apart. I learned that my social climber boyfriend is only with me for money and heard his friends call me a trust fund Barbie. He was livid when I presented him a prenup and I made sure to ruin his life. My family owns a business that is very well known in our sector and makes loads of profit, thus I am a trust fund baby. I try to not be spoiled and have always worked myself. I met my fiancé Mark when I was 20 and working as a waitress. I worked there because of experience and not for money. We began dating a few months later and he proposed to me last year. Now Mark is not poor, he is upper middle class. While he didn't struggle in life, he didn't have too much to spend and lived very frugally. I thought he was an honest man because he always wanted to pay for his things and reject expensive family holidays. When we were still dating, he would cook for me instead of going with me dining outside. What I want to say is that I never had the impression that Mark was trying to take advantage of me or my family. In the beginning, my family was a little sketched out and brought up the gold digger argument and I stood up for him. Eventually, they came to love and accept him. When Mark graduated, Dad hired him and now he is in a high-earning position. I envisioned my future with him, but I did not expect how deceitful he was. Sunday I was supposed to work in the evening and I was going to stay with my sister. But I got a fever and was just non-functioning, so I stayed home. Instead of staying in our bedroom, I made my way to the guest room that is better ventilated. Mark came home when I was fast asleep and loud voices in our garden woke me up. I pushed the curtains a bit to the side and Mark was there with a few friends. Just as I wanted to say hello, I noticed they were talking about me. His friend kept laughing and calling Mark the man. Then they started laughing about me being willing to not sign a prenup. Then one of the girls that was there said something along the lines of, "Jesus, you are about to make some bank, Mark." Mark laughed and said, "Yeah, just 3 more years and I am free." I kept hearing them calling me trust fund Barbie and stupid and so on. At this moment, I felt sick to my stomach and wanted to throw up. I didn't know what to do, so I just lay petrified in my bed and waited until the people left and Mark went to bed. I texted my sister and snuck out to her place in the middle of the night and just passed out without telling her anything. I did not return home for 2 days. I just told him I was sick and didn't want to make him sick. My sister has been really worried, but I just feel so ashamed about everything. My family was right. Mark is a gold digger and I fell for it. I told my dad about it. He comforted me and said that he wouldn't let Mark get away with this poop. I stayed for 2 more days with my sister and made a plan. I was very tempted to play the long game and lead him on, but I decided to just present him with a prenup to look into his reaction. After telling my dad, we invited Mark for lunch at my parents' house and would serve him the prenup there. Mark came, asked me if I was already okay, and kissed me on the cheeks. I was disgusted, but I just smiled and told him that I feel absolutely wonderful now. We finished lunch and Dad served him the papers saying that it was a must for getting married. You could instantly see that he didn't expect this. He got angry and asked me to speak to him alone. We went into the other room and he began babbling about blindsiding him and that this just really felt like a personal attack. He was trying so hard to sell me the role of a victim and making me out to be the villain. Then he just said that he needed to think everything through and left. I have to admit I kinda broke down and began second guessing, but I could keep it together because he was the one who slapped me with the truth. I stayed with my parents for a week and my family happily didn't pull the "I told you so." I decided to evict him from my house because there was no way in hell that I would let him leech off of me. We looked into everything and I have the legal right to evict him. The lawyer handled everything and wrote an official eviction notice. After a lot of talk, Dad decided to present Mark with a deal so that he would leave the company. After that was all sorted out, I decided to just simply text, "Hey Mark, trust fund Barbie here. As you said you would be free in 3 years. I'll do you a big favor and set you free now. Kisses." My phone completely blew up with Mark's messages after I sent that. He texted and called me so many times I had to switch off my phone. He came to my sister's place as he wanted to explain the situation. He promised that it was just a joke a million times. I said it wasn't cutting it. They disrespected me in my own house, and I didn't want to be with someone who put me down to appear better. He pleaded and cried. He begged me not to end things. When I wasn't budging, he got mad at me, accusing me of spying on him and ruining his life. Then his manner changed once again to apologetic. He eventually owned up to the comment he made, still insisting that it was just an awful joke. I stood strong and I ended things with him. I will never know what exactly his plan was, but it's better to have things this way. We still have to sort out some financial stuff, but after that, I won't ever see Mark again.
Girl says I got her pregnant, I'm gay. I 19 meters live with my parents who are well off for themselves. Note, they pay for nearly all of my expenses including my college, who are very openly homophobic. I also have a best friend who for now is called Kara. We've been friends since grade school. Kira loves and is always out partying. This is significant to the story. I have a boyfriend named Jamie 20 meters. Me and Jamie have been dating for about a year. Note, him, Kara, and I are the only people who know. Now, about 7 weeks ago Jamie had a party at his house and invited me and Kira. Everyone was drinking, however every drink I had that night was handed to me by Kara. I had 2 the whole night. I started feeling dizzy and nauseous, so since it was Jamie's house I went to his room and laid in his bed starting to fall asleep. Note, I was fully clothed at this because Jamie helped me and saw me sleeping. That was what happened that whole night and nothing else. However, this morning Kara showed up at my parents' house saying I got her pregnant. As said before, she know I am gay and me and Jamie are together. My parents were surprised. They asked what proof she had. She then proceeded to pull out her phone and show a picture of both of us naked laying in Jamie's bed from the party 7 weeks ago. She then proceeded to say we've been dating since we got out of high school. My parents were shocked and told us we needed to discuss what we were gonna do and said that it's all my responsibility to raise a kid now. Kara dragged me to the living room and told me I had 2 options. I either treat the babies, she's having twins apparently, like they are mine, or she outs me. She told me she got knocked up a while back at a party and is 6 weeks exactly, and that she didn't know who the real father is, so it would be in my best interest to help your best friend out. So I am currently sitting here locked up in my room debating whether I devote the rest of my life to kids who aren't mine as well as a woman I've lost all trust in and make everyone else happy, or come out to my parent and tell them about Jamie, almost guaranteed to be disowned and lose all the savings they used have for me, including my college tuition and various other things like living space. So I have came to the place where I hear a ton of people ask for advice on what to do. So WTH should I do in this F up situation?
Excited to be finally forming a bond with my daughter. I am 25, have a 4-year-old daughter. I found out about my daughter just a few months ago. Her mom passed away and didn't know how to tell me about our daughter but wanted me to take care of her. After getting a paternity test done to make sure she was mine, I took her in because otherwise she would have been in foster care. My daughter is a sweet little girl but has been more on the quiet side, which is very understandable since we just met 3 months ago, and to a lot of people I look intimidating when we first meet. I'm 6'4" and I have quite a few tattoos. So I would think to a little 4-year-old I would look slightly scary. A few days ago in the morning my daughter woke up not feeling well, just a little cold. For the few days she was sick she didn't want to leave my side, so we spent most days cuddling and watching Disney movies. Today she was finally feeling a lot better. She was wanting me to play with her and was overall a lot more talkative compared to how she usually is with me. But what really got to me was when I put her down for her nap, and I always tell her I love her. As I was about to leave her room she said love you too, my first name. She knows I'm her dad but she hasn't called me daddy yet. I know this is just the start to us having a good relationship, but I'm so excited. Even though I've only known her a short while, I love her so much.
My sister snatched my fiancé away from me and said that she loved him for years. After 5 years, she's begging me to help her talk to him because he wants her to be like me. 5 years ago my older sister, Jane, slept with my ex-fiancé, John. It was one of those I've loved him for years situations for Jane, or so she claimed back then, so she took her shot to get with him even as the mistress he hides away. And John, well, he was pissed back then because I didn't fight for our relationship. Suffice it to say that when I found out they were screwing around, I mentally thought, wow, these people are pathetic. I had no intentions of fighting, arguing, or begging. I never even cried now that I think about it. Even back then, I was a one and done kind of person. I cut my mother off for cheating on my dad. I cut off friends who cheated on their partners even when we were stupid kids. Cheating isn't a mistake. It pisses me off thinking about it. Jane crying and telling me you have to understand like I hadn't caught her screwing my fiancé in my bed in my condo. Or John yelling at me, saying, if you ever loved me, you'd fight for me, or cry for me, or do something. And then the most hilarious line of maybe if you put out more, I wouldn't have strayed. I tossed them out, packed up my crap, cancelled everything but the honeymoon, and got refunds. I sent John's family their 25% contribution and security footage of John screwing my sister in the living room. And that was beyond petty, but despite how much his family loved me, I also knew that his doting father and grandmother would never believe John was capable of cheating on me without some kind of proof. I had also evicted John and then had an agent sell my condo while I turned my would-be honeymoon into a solo thank I'm free trip. And when I came back, I moved. Again, the one and done kind of girl. Cheaters, liars, betrayers, and perverse jerks do not deserve forgiveness nor second chances. I learned that with my parents' situation. You give a second chance, they'll do it over and over again, then scream, you said you forgave me and I can't help it. It meant nothing while victimizing themselves. It took my dad years to stop forgiving my mother, but I will never make that mistake. In 5 years, Jane and John got married because she was pregnant, moved into her apartment together, and now have 3 children. They have no friends and no familial support beyond my mother. My dad is apparently involved with his grandson, but he does not help financially, babysit, or even let John into his house. I was visiting my dad when Jane showed up at his house in the middle of the night. She had her children with her, had a black eye, marks on her neck, and bruises on her arm. And initially, I was worried as my dad brought them all in. That worry disappeared the moment she said John got angry at her because I'm not Mary. She was blubbering about all the things John expected of her and how he essentially wanted her to be me, Little Miss Perfect, even though I was the one who didn't want him. Dad tried to stop her multiple times, but I told her to keep going. Her tirade was how it should have been me he hated and hit, not her. John lost his family because of me. They only have our mother as help because of me. That I didn't love him enough to fight or be with him no matter the circumstances like she did. That everything falling apart was on me, not her. And that she was sick of how I ran away and yet still managed to ruin her relationship with John. Even her wedding was all about how Mary would have wanted this, and intimacy always ends with intimacy with Mary was better, you need to try harder. And apparently, in Jane's eyes, John beating her for the first time was entirely on me. Wanna know why? Because her children look like our mother instead of me, who looks like my father. Even her children are treated like after-thoughts by John because he had hoped they'd get good genes. They only had another child because he wanted one to look like me and that one doesn't either. And then, she said that maybe if I talked to John, things would get better for her. After all that, Dad pretty much told her that her kids would be staying with him, but she was on her own. Go to the police or your mother. Then she turns to me, begging me to convince him otherwise. Like, is she serious? You're in a situation of your own making. You're older than me, decided to screw a taken man, and then married him even after you claimed all he wanted was the woman that abandoned him. You're the one who was cut off from any viable support system by being an awful person. No one deserves to be abused and I don't view it as karma, but Jane stopped being my sister the first time she slept with John. Someone who loves you would never show such blatant hate for you. That goes for both of them.
NSFW, what are the best accidental nudities you have seen? Not sexual. One time I run into the restaurant. This was a multi-stall bathroom, so no one should have expected real privacy. But there in front of me was a fully nude, insanely fat black woman sitting on the toilet directly across from the door. Judging from the smell, she was obviously taking a shit, and while she looked shocked/embarrassed, she didn't make any attempt to close the stall door. She was fat, but the door would have closed. I just backed out of the bathroom, ran out to the car, and told my parents we needed to find me another place to pee. I can still see her in my mind all these years, decades later. I was a pizza driver, so it wasn't unheard of to see accidents. This one was weird though. I went to a house that I knew some 20-os lived at, so I expected the typical guy. However, when he came to the door, he said just a minute. He had to wake her up. She comes up to the door in this cloak fashion to look like Totoro. I complimented her on it and she shows it off to me saying how cute it is, and it's around this time that I notice her tits have popped out. She finishes paying and asks for help with math for a tip, so when I told her it was $5, she bumped it up to $9. Her tits were out the entire time. I think she noticed at some point, but clearly didn't care. Probably the best and strangest delivery I've ever done. Lesbian changing in my room. Was in the military, at the dorms, and this woman Marine just arrived on base and needed to report into command, and I happened to be standing outside my room. She asked if she could borrow my room to change. Sure, why not? I go stand outside to offer her some privacy and she calls out that she forgot something in her bag and if I could grab it for her. I go in and grab it for her and she is just standing there, nude, very casually. I quickly handed her the item and left the room. No, she was not into me, it was a very casual attitude. And she told me later that she was into women, and laughed at my awkwardness. When you have roommates, accidental nudity is pretty common, I would say. We have 2 bathrooms at my house, one upstairs and one downstairs. One night, I get up from my sleep to pee, and my roommate is in the bathroom with the light off standing over the sink. Not pissing, not shitting, just standing there in the dark. I grabbed my boobies so fast and ran back to my room. He said sorry. The dude's bedroom is downstairs. The bathroom downstairs is 10 effing feet from his room. It made no sense that he was up there at 3 a.m.
What's the dumbest thing someone has told you? Friend in high school told me he didn't take the SAT because he heard it's easier the second time. How does that make effing sense? That windshield wipers wear out faster in the middle, because that's the part you look through the most often, as if your sight is an energy beam that degrades the rubber or something. That birds are mammals because they have meat. That direction can't be north because it's diagonal and north has to be in a straight line. What? Why are people Canadian? The teaching assistant for one of my classes in college said his parents didn't let him watch VeggieTales as a kid because vegetables aren't supposed to have souls. That South Pole is hot because it's south. My stepsister told me we should see the PG-13 movie because PG meant pretty good. I wish I were joking. Math isn't real. Like if I said 2 + 2 = 5 it would be true. This was from a nursing student. Have you ever seen someone ruin their life in just a few seconds?
How did they do it?
It took longer than a few seconds, but he did totally screw up his life. We worked in the bullpen at a software support office. A new guy was hired, and he hit the ground running. He was typically the first to arrive in the morning and the last to leave at the end of the workday. He had aspirations to move up the corporate ladder, and was competent and intelligent enough to pull it off. His only quirks were that he always kept his personal laptop on his desk with the screen angled so no one could clearly see what he was doing. It was a relaxed environment. The boss didn't care if we played a video game during lunch, as long as calls were being answered and cases were being closed. One Friday afternoon, instead of working until the boss told him to go home, he wanted to leave a few minutes early. Come 4:45 or so, he was out the door like his butt was on fire and his hair was catching. It was out of character for him, but the rest of us didn't give it much thought. The next Monday, he was nowhere to be seen. The boss called us together for a quick huddle meeting, and informed us that we were to equally divide his caseload among us, and there would be no further discussion about him, period. HR emailed shortly after that any discussion or speculation about him would result in immediate disciplinary action. Later that day, guess who we saw written up in the local newspaper? Turns out he had been communicating with a person he thought was a 13-year-old girl, and had everything set up for a rendezvous with her at a motel in a small town a couple of hours away. When he heard a knock on the door, he was wearing underwear and a smile, had his laptop set up to record what was going to happen on the bed, and had several toys within easy reach, except his 13-year-old girl turned out to be a middle-aged cop with absolutely no sense of humor. The picture posted with the article was clearly him, but it looked like the cops weren't exactly gentle when they took him into custody. We had met his wife at a team-building camping trip. They gave every appearance that they were a good Christian couple. She dressed very conservatively, and although she remained silent while they were there, she was clearly not happy. Right after his arrest, she told one of my coworkers that she was going to stand by her husband, and the Lord would see them through the challenges their marriage was facing. After his arraignment, when the full details of his offenses were spelled out, divorce papers were filed.
Final, my best friend's fiancé asked me to not attend their wedding and cut my friend off. I talked with Sophia. I talked with her, I told her she doesn't have to worry about me. If she feels uncomfortable we should talk things out. She told me she was wrong with how this went. She was just scared and did not mean what she said. She told me everything was fine until me and my ex broke up. She just started worrying for no reason. Jack never did anything to make her worry about me. She was stressed with the wedding planning. I believe her. I know she is a nice person. She has never been close to me, but I know her. We have met at family gatherings and went out with friends. And to be honest, she gets really stressed. We talked with mom and dad and they are happy we solved the problem. Jack has also talked with her and they have made up. The wedding is still going to happen. But I still won't go. I did not know Sophia knew Jack had a crush for me, and to be honest it is for the best. I never meant to make Sophia the bad guy. I just wanted to know what to do. Jack loves her and I am sure of that. I don't think he will take me as a sister even if he doesn't like me. I am just a close friend. But he is my family and always will be. And no, I did not ever have feelings for him really. You guys literally made me question my life. I never loved Jack like I loved my ex, so I am sure. And to the people waiting for me and Jack together, that is not happening, never. I am actually trying to get back with my ex. Thanks again to all of you. Hi, will the wedding be cancelled again? I am not in a good place right now to say what has happened, but when I am feeling better, I have cut contact with Jack. Thank you guys again. I just thought you needed to know Jack cancelled the wedding and wanted me to give him a chance. Hi, a lot has happened. I owe this to you guys. I want to answer some questions. Why did I say I will not be attending? Sophia wanted me to go after we talked. She told me a lot of things about Jack. He started liking me in 3rd grade. I did not know when it started. And when I realized how long and serious he was. Honestly, if I was in her shoes I wouldn't like the girl my husband had a crush on to be at my wedding. I decided not to go just to show my respect for their relationship. Sophia still wanted me to go and kept on calling me. Our flight was the 8th at 10 a.m. I was supposed to still go because we, family and friends, are also having a vacation there after Jack and Sophia leave for their honeymoon. I cancelled everything including the vacation. I was going to go back home the next day. I helped mom and dad with their luggage, and went to the airport at 8 o'clock to see them off. It was 9 and Jack and Sophia were not here yet. Sophia arrived at 9:30 and started crying in the airport saying that Jack left and hasn't come back. We called but he did not answer. Sophia started yelling saying it was my fault. I should have just agreed to come to the wedding after she apologized. I told her she asked me not to go and that not going is the right thing to do because I don't want anything to do with their relationship. She told me it was hard to convince him to propose and finally get married, and me not going just ruined everything for her. And just made him know that he still loved me. And broke things off with her. I told her that his AU problem. She said I will always be the problem, he still wants me, always talking about me, how I make him so happy, how my food is so good when she cooks for him, how she is not as funny as me, how he cried and broke up with her after finding out me and my ex were trying for a baby, and she had to convince him to get back together. I told her she doesn't want me in their life, that is why I am not going to the wedding, and told Jack to keep space and time between us, and now she is upset, and why would she ever want to convince a man to marry her? She should have left long ago. I never knew he still liked me after dating her, and now that I know, and tried leaving, I am still a problem for her. I told her she can marry him or not. I will cut contact with him, but I will not be leaving my parents, and that is something she needs to know. She stated getting in my face and yelling at me. My mom steps in. She told her I am sorry for the bad things my son has done, but just know she is my daughter. She did nothing wrong. If you try to hurt her because you think she is the wall between you and Jack, no, I will not accept you in my family. You should never ask and convince a guy to marry you. Not saying my son is innocent, but you shouldn't be with a man that has to think twice about marrying you. My parents asked me to leave and we left together. We went back to the hotel. Mom and Dad said even if the wedding will still take place, they will not be attending, and if Jack and Sophia are both not fully in this marriage, they don't support it. I talked with them, they told me I was not wrong and I did the right thing by cutting Jack off. Even if they never wanted it to be the best for the both of us. I then left and booked myself a room. Jack called and I did not answer. He couldn't find me since I am now in a different room. He called asking to meet. I knew I needed to face him, but what would I say to him? Oh yeah, you fiancé just told me you still haven't got over me after you told me you did yesterday. He sent me his room number. If I wanted to see him I did go. It hurts to say I have lost someone very important. He asked if he can say what he has always wanted to say. I told him if he is going to say what I think he will, then he should know he has lost me because I can't be his sister if he feels that way about me. He still did it. He confessed his feelings for me. It really broke me to be honest, and what and how he said it just makes me realize what a jerk I am. What he said is, Azora, I have liked you since forever and I still do. I know we can work this out and try. Please give me a try. I have been waiting for you to finally accept me for 19 years. I will not stop until you give me a try because even if you do not, I know what we had, I ruined it. So please let us have a chance. I'm really broke. He has never cared for me because if he did he wouldn't have said it. I told him no, he can forget once having a friend, and I will forget I once had a brother. I told him right now is the moment everything ended between us. I told him it will be hard since we still have the same parents, and I will be keeping a distance, but I will not cut them off as long as they don't want that. I will not come to family gatherings. I will just go on days he will not be there. He cried and kept on trying to hug me. I told him he can't control feelings, but after he told me he once liked me and I told him I didn't, today shouldn't have happened. The wedding shouldn't have been arranged again. I apologize if I ever did something to make him feel the way he does about me, and I apologize for not leaving the moment I realized he liked me, that I never knew he was that serious, and I thought everything ended when they started dating. I went to my parents, I told them, they understood everything and respected everything. I am still their daughter. We will meet but not like before. I then left to go home. And yes, to the people who are saying I shouldn't have stayed with him, I really did think he has got over me, and that was a mistake on my side, but I did nothing wrong to them. I did not tell them to date each other, I did not tell them to get married, I did not tell him to end it, I did not tell her I want him. I have made things clear from the start, about not going to her wedding. I did accept not going, but I needed to tell him what she wanted. I told my parents what their future daughter wants. I told him before he agreed to continue with the wedding, that I will keep myself away from his relationship. We should both have space and focus on our relationships. He knows me and my ex are talking about getting together. So I am not wrong for what I did. I am tired of always trying to fix things, and if I can't fix them I take the blame. I really did remove myself a bit before, when we were single, but now I know it was not enough. So I just wanted to update you guys and thank you all. Sometimes life is not the sweetest, it really hurts losing him, but it's the best thing I can do for him. And to the people saying Jack had feelings because I did something, I don't know what that is, but I never flirted with him. We just talked, played games, watched movies, just like every other guy friends I had, except that me and Jack hang out more, and more closer to the others. For God's sake, I have known this guy forever. Again, thank you guys so much. What's the most hurtful thing you've overheard about yourself by accident? It was about 9 years ago and I was getting married, so a hen's night was in order. I had originally wanted to book a bus and have a wine tour of a nearby vineyard, but my bridesmaid said it wasn't a good idea because not everyone liked wine. Ideas were thrown back and forth and eventually it was settled for a night in the city with laser bowling and karaoke with pizza and drinks. We'd have our own room and I was so excited to get out of my comfort zone and have a fun night. I invited my small group of friends, and some family, and took the opportunity to ask some girls I knew through a bridesmaid but hadn't taken it to the next level. I thought I would like to get to know them better and expand my social group, so I asked them along and they accepted my invitation. I am very much an introvert, quiet, and can be nervous in social situations around new people, so this was a big step for me. On the night I was super pumped but worried that everyone was having a good time. These ladies arrived an hour late, pizza had to start about 20 minutes after we arrived, otherwise we'd lose our bowling time and it would change our booking for karaoke. So we couldn't wait any longer and started to eat and drink. When they arrived they were pissed that we'd started without them. Not thinking much of it, because it was my night, I apologized and then enjoyed drinking and bowling followed by karaoke. I was having a blast and hoped everyone was too. After a few beverages, I needed to go to the ladies' As I walk in, I hear those ladies talking in the mirrors, fixing their makeup. Lady 1, oh my god, this is the worst hen's night I've ever been to. Lady 2, yes. What was she thinking, who thinks bowling and karaoke would be a good time? L1, what a loser. She started the party without us too. Let's get out of this hole and go clubbing. A mutual friend was standing there nodding her head at both ladies. As I walked in, I stopped to say hello and ask about how they were enjoying themselves. But instead heard everything. Their heads turn and their eyes all stare straight into mine. I stand there gaping like a fish, say nothing, turn my heels and lock myself in the toilet cubicle to have a cry and meltdown. I'm not sure how long I was in there, but long enough for people to notice and come find me. Both ladies left without saying a word, and never apologized despite seeing them at a mutual friend's get-together.
Redditors who adopted older kids, how did the first day, week, month go? Adopted our daughter at age 12. She's now 17. There were a lot of hurdles. She had a lot of food scarcity issues, so trying to convince her not to hide food away in her room was a hard sell. I still occasionally find a box of raisins inside a sleeve of her sweater, or a baggie of cereal under her desk. She never had any rage issues, but lots and lots of breakdowns, lots of sobbing, lots of moments where she declared that she hated herself. We're still dealing with some self-esteem issues. She doesn't see herself as competent, and will occasionally develop intense anxiety over things that she has done before. Driving was a big one. One day she just couldn't do it anymore. She started having panic attacks, saying that if she wrecked and hurt one of us, the surviving one would be so angry we'd send her back. When we worked through that fear, letting her know that there is nothing she could ever do to make us send her back, it became, well, if I hurt both of you in a car accident, I'll have to go back to the system anyway, and so will, bio-son's name, and I could never live with myself if I did that. And now we're trying to slowly build up her confidence again. We are aware that she likely will not move out until she's well into her 20s. She's a little immature, and so uncertain of herself, but that's okay.
When I was around 5 years old, my family and I had this wild adventure that we'd laugh about for years. We were on a road trip and stopped at a gas station to fill up. Mom, Grandma, my brother, and I went inside to pay, but we were short 13 cents. So, Mom tells the cashier she'll go get the change from the car. She hands me the 13 cents and asks me to pay while she heads out. Cool, I got this. I waited in line, but I didn't know I could just skip to the front. When I'm finally done and step outside, I see our minivan driving away. What? They left without me. In a place I didn't know, miles away from home. I start getting nervous, but I'm like, maybe they'll be right back? So I sat down on a concrete thing near the gas station. I'm crying a little, but then after a while, I spot our van coming back. Phew. Mom's crying when they pull up, and she's hugging and apologizing like crazy. Here's the funny part. Turns out my brother closed the car door, and Mom thought I was back inside. We tell this story and laugh about it for ages. Even Mom laughed with us. Unfortunately, Mom got upset every time we joked about it, but she's an amazing mom. My wife drained our savings and abandoned me 2 months ago to find herself. My 50M wife, Mary, developed memory issues in their mid to late 50s. Her mom, grandmother, and several other relatives on her mom's side have developed dementia. Her dad is no longer in the picture and her mom lived with us for 4 years until earlier this year. Our kids are independent and out of the house, with the oldest in her last semester of college and the younger one enlisted. The last 4 years were really tough on us in our marriage. Living with someone with dementia is absolutely brutal. We had talked a lot last year about using the remaining college funds, our regular savings, selling or renting the house, quitting our jobs and traveling for a year or until the money ran out. We just had to wait for her mom to move into a home. I understood her anxiety about developing dementia and I was burned out living through COVID, working remotely, having a wife working remotely, a college and high school student taking remote classes, and a mother-in-law with dementia. Try that and see how well you hold up. Space finally opened up and we were able to move her mom into a care facility. I finally thought I had a chance to breathe. When we moved Mary's mom out, Mary's mental health took a huge downward spiral. I went from caring for her mom to caring for her. She felt guilty about putting her mom in a home and had lots of anxiety about developing dementia. Our plan was to start our travels in the summer of 2024. 2 months ago, I got home, and she had left a note. Basically, she was going on a trip without me. She had quit her job, taken most of the savings, and wasn't sure when she'd be back. Maybe a year, maybe sooner. She said she knew I'd understand. Her location is turned off, and my calls go directly to voicemail. All I could do was text the kids a picture of the note. We have our own checking accounts for direct deposits of our paychecks, but we transfer most into a joint account to pay the household bills and savings. We both had access to the main savings account, and she had drained it. I waited a month to see if she'd come back, hopefully before she spent our savings. After receiving only one text in the first month, I went to a lawyer. She basically said there was very little to do right now other than change the beneficiaries of my retirement accounts and life insurance. Hooray, I guess my wife gets nothing else if I pass away alone while she's having our adventures. It was only a month, and there was no way to serve her papers. My lawyer advised me to keep paying the mortgage on the cars. The cost of trying to get a judge to approve the sale of joint assets was more than making payments. I didn't want to ruin my credit by letting one of our cars get repossessed, but I can't sell it because she's on the title. I get random texts and she sporadically posts on Instagram. Of course she has comments turned off. I want to block her so badly, but my lawyer advised me that it's better to maintain a communication channel that's not through our kids. Her last post was from Hawaii. She put in the comments how great a husband I was for letting her take this trip. I'm barely making it. Paying 2 cars, a mortgage, household bills, insurance, hoping there are no emergencies because I have no savings and she's enjoying our trip alone. I'm so pissed at her. I helped take care of her mom for 4 years, and when she fell apart after her mom moved into a memory care home, she returned the favor by abandoning me. I'll never get to take this trip and have to put off retirement. My only solace is that the kids are angry at her, but they'll probably forgive her eventually. I'm no fool. I know she's hooking up with guys. She looks good, and she'll have zero problems getting men. I texted her and asked if she was sleeping around, and it took her an entire week to respond that she wasn't. So I'm drinking alone on a Friday night and she's somewhere, probably on a beach enjoying life. I hate her. Update 1. An update for my original post. I'm feeling much more positive now that the financial situation has become a little more manageable. Basically, I'm running up debt that will get paid off when I sell the house. Even with lawyer fees, I have 6 to 8 more months before I have to worry about money, assuming there are no emergencies. My friend's wife gave me some good advice. Don't go from being a hero to a villain in your kids' eyes. How I talk about and treat my wife will determine my future relationship with my kids. I don't give a damn about my wife, but I don't want to make her a sympathetic figure or drive them away from both of us. I followed up with a lawyer. Basically, she said we're going to have her pay back the savings she took through a reduction in her share of the assets. Any division of assets will include the savings she took. She'll also have to repay the money I spent maintaining the household while she was gone. There is plenty of equity in her share of the house and her retirement plans to cover that. She said that our finances are so intertwined after nearly 25 years of marriage. My wife is going to get some share of the assets. The best case is she agrees to the terms of the divorce and it's relatively cheap and quick. Otherwise it gets complicated and expensive. She gave me a lot of options and how much I can expect to spend, so I decided to just mostly wait. Now that my financial situation is less stressful, I'm actually enjoying her being gone. I'm free to do whatever I want, whenever I want. I don't have to cook or clean or take care of anyone. The house is quiet for the first time I can remember. I loved my wife, but her mental health weighed down our marriage. The first month or so, I expected her to be there whenever I got home. When someone was at the door, or if I heard noises, I think it was her. I checked the doorbell cam obsessively. I'm not looking forward to her returning. It has to happen, but when she comes back, I'll have to deal with her, the divorce, getting the house ready to sell, dividing all our stuff, finding a new place to live. I'm hoping she'll stay away until after New Year's, but my daughter said she thinks her mom will be home for Christmas. My lawyer will have papers ready to serve her. Hopefully she'll just agree to the terms and continue her travels.
When did the popular kid's life fall apart in a few seconds? 3 popular kids went swimming in a quarry, only 2 came out. It sucks because the one that died was popular for all the right reasons. He was a genuinely good dude. I was the weird kid, but his locker was right next to mine and he was friendly every single day to every single person. He was an only child, and his dad had died when he was 2, was really happy-go-lucky, and he was popular because he was outgoing, supportive, warm and kind to everybody without fail, and although he was friends with the kind of kids who bullied people, he was the first person to tell them to knock that shit off if he saw it. When we were 16, his mum, who was one of the nicest ladies I ever met in our small town, passed away in a freak accident involving a semi-trailer. He dropped out of school, he stopped talking to anybody, and he refused to let anyone visit him. I have no idea what became of him. Sorry Jay. I hope your life got better.
Bully me as a kid? You're getting substance busted as an adult. I was a weird kid growing up, really weird. It was mostly because I was being abused at home and forcibly isolated. My social skills were so underdeveloped that I had difficulty reading human faces aside from my grandmother, grandfather, and father. Being a weird kid meant that I was a juicy target for bullies. It never stopped, but there was one bully that I hated more than any of the others. We'll call her Holly. This girl never passed up an opportunity to make my life hell, and since she lived across the street from me there was nowhere I could avoid her. Holly treated me like garbage. Here are a few examples. She put dog crap in our mailbox on a regular basis. She let my dog out of my yard and I was never able to get her back. She would also sit on her porch with her friends and roast the hell out of me to entertain them if I so much as put a toe outside of my front door. It went on for years. I hated her with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns, but while my grandmother was still alive there was nothing I could do about Holly. If I did anything to her or fought back in any way my grandmother would punish me for it, and I was more afraid of her than I was Holly, for a very good reason. So I made a plan. I suffered through all the abuse and promised myself that when I was older I would make Holly pay for what she did to me. Thinking of what I was going to do to her when the time was right was sometimes the only thing that kept me going. Over time, Holly grew up, and eventually she left me alone and stopped being an a-hole, but unfortunately for her by then it was too late. I didn't give a shit about her new moral epiphany. I had been nursing my grudge for 2 decades and it was time for a reckoning. I was going to destroy that beach. When my grandmother finally died, it was go time, and I'd had 20 years to plan. I wasn't idle while I waited. In fact, I'd made it my mission in life to learn as much about Holly as possible, and to do it I became friends with a few people on the periphery of her social circle. Eventually, I knew more about her and her life than her own mother did. The first step I took in my plan was getting her fired from her job. It took longer than I would have liked, but eventually I managed it. Holly worked at a doctor's office, and I knew that the doctor she worked for was super Christian. Very straight edge, upstanding type of guy. He also had a huge influence on the local community. I decided to become a patient at his office, scheduling my visits to be on the days Holly was off work. After a couple of visits, I just happened to notice Holly in the staff photo on the waiting room wall. I made a show of looking surprised and then concerned. I got to the exam room, and the doctor came in shortly after. The expression on my face got his attention, and he asked me what was wrong. I told him that even though I didn't want to, as a Christian I couldn't keep my knowledge a secret and still sleep at night because I just couldn't let him endanger his soul and reputation by doing nothing. I had his full attention, and I asked him as one fellow Christian to another not to tell anyone where he got the information I was about to give him, and after he promised he would, I told him that I knew that Holly was using illegal substances. He was absolutely floored, and at first he didn't believe me. I told him that I understood his skepticism entirely, but it was easy enough to prove or disprove my information with the substance test. If I was wrong, he lost nothing. If I was right, he was saving himself from trouble down the road. He finally agreed to test her, and he tested everyone else too so that it didn't look like Holly was the only target. See, I wasn't actually lying. Holly smoked a shitload of 420, and I knew that because it was my dad she used to get it from. He'd been her 420 dude since she was like 15. Her test came back positive for 420 and much to my surprise, Xanax. Oopsie. The doctor fired Holly on the spot when the results of the urinalysis came back, and then he called me to thank me for telling him what was going on, and before he hung up he told me that I truly walked with the Lord. Y'all will never know how hard I had to fight not to laugh at the depths of his wrongness. I thought I was going to pop a blood vessel. Phase 1 complete. I know what you're thinking, it's just a job and it's not like she can't go get another one, right? Losing a job isn't the end of the world. You'd be wrong. Remember how I said that her boss had a very high reputation in our area? That man called every single hospital and doctor's office in the state personally to make sure that none of them would hire Holly and risk liability and loss of community trust for associating with her. Holly's field of study was all pertaining to the medical profession, so her education was rendered worthless because nobody would hire her. I wasn't done yet. Nope. Not even close. Update: bully me as a kid? You're getting substance busted as an adult. She lost her job, and because she had no income her car got repossessed. She still had her family though, 2 kids and a fiancé. Who needs families? Amirite? With the help of a good friend of mine, we catfished the F out of her fiancé. My friend is hot as F, and she let me use pictures of her to prove that she was really real. She even got on Skype with him once. When he finally made the arrangements for a face-to-face encounter and booked a hotel room, I texted the screenshots of everything to Holly from a burner number. To say the excrement impacted the oscillating unit would be a vast understatement. They broke up, the whole thing was an ordeal, and Holly was devastated. She had 2 kids, no job, and now no fiancé who could help her keep the family afloat. A normal person would have stopped then. Unfortunately, I am not normal and I was going full scorched earth. I seethed for 20 years, no way in hell was I going easy on her. Phase 3. With her fiancé gone and no job, Holly was struggling badly. She needed money and she needed it quickly before she and the kids got evicted. Meth is a giant problem in my area, and it's high risk but it's also fast money, and so I started subtly mentioning Holly's situation among my more legally questionable family. Eventually one of my family's friends who happened to be a meth cook got in contact with Holly and offered her a shitload of cash to let him cook dope at her house. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. 2 days and then done forever. Holly was desperate, so she said yes. Everything went smoothly at first, but dead in the middle of the cook, someone called in an anonymous tip about an active cook in progress to the local narcotics unit. They rolled up on Holly's house at about 3 a.m. and caught everybody inside, including Holly red-handed making meth. Watching her cry when they handcuffed her and put her in that police cruiser was one of the most gloriously satisfying moments of my life. She was in deep legal poop, and to make a bad situation even worse, most houses where labs are discovered aren't deemed habitable afterwards because the toxic fumes from the chemicals used to make the substance get everywhere, and it's super hard and time-consuming to clean. It's up to the property owner to either hire a hazmat team to clean it, or condemn it and tear it down. A lab cleanup costs thousands of dollars. It would have cost more money to clean it than the entire property was worth. So it got torn down, with everything Holly owned still inside. See, you can't take things out of a meth lab because they're going to be covered in toxic residue. It can make you very sick, especially young children. Everything in the residence is usually counted as a loss. Now some people sneak in and grab stuff anyway, but whatever, it's their funeral. But since Holly was still sitting in jail, so there was no way for her to get anything, and none of her close family were interested in risking getting caught sneaking into the house and being accused of stealing or tampering with a crime scene. Holly ended up in jail for a while, and while she was gone the court gave their father, ex-fiancé, sole custody of their children, and Holly was only given supervised visitation. 2 hours every Saturday if I recall correctly. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and mine was freezing. I was behind every single bad thing that happened in Holly's life, in one way or another, for an entire 5-year period. She decided she liked bullying me and making my life hell, and she figured there would never be any consequences. Instead, I took her reputation, her job, her fiancé, got her arrested and convicted of a felony, and her children taken from her, and the best part is that she has no clue I did it to this very day. Last I heard, she was in rehab for alcoholism and had her parental rights terminated permanently. After she lost her kid, she just sort of gave up and crawled into a bottle and never came out again. I was tempted to tell her, but I decided that the helplessness and confusion about why everything suddenly went to hell in a handbasket was the better plan, because that means that every now and again I can contact her and pretend to give a poop about her troubles to get a fresh revenge boner about her newest tale of woe. She thinks I'm the nicest person she's ever met.
Younger people of Reddit. What are you tired of hearing from older generations? As an older person, I say this often. Not as a point of detriment, but as a matter of fact. Young people want to drink and go to parties. Obviously. Why wouldn't you? Being young and in your early 20s is the perfect time to be drinking and partying. It's when it's the most fun. It's when spending a whole weekend partying isn't going to lead to ruining your week, or getting you in trouble at work, or at least getting in trouble at the shitty job you have. That doesn't really matter, isn't a big deal. It's when all of your friends are usually available at a moment's notice instead of struggling to even get in contact with your buddies and work around their schedules to find a time where 3 people can meet up for in just an hour. It's when the work to prepare for a party doesn't outweigh the benefits of actually going. When you don't have to spend a week preparing, trying to balance your responsibilities so that being away for a night doesn't screw up your plans. Where you have to arrange things for giving yourself a buffer day to recover from said party, while making sure you aren't stuck doing shit you hate doing but have to anyways, and making sure you don't have to do it while hungover. And you do all that just to have half of your friends cancel because they couldn't manage to make all that work on their end, and you end up with the 3 buddies that could, and it's just hanging out, drinking and playing cards for a few hours and going home. Seriously, young people should want to drink and party. If you don't do it then, you just miss out because it only gets worse from there. I regret rejecting him. So I have a best friend who we'll call Jay, who's also my schoolmate, classmate, and we live in the same residential area. A little description on Jay. He's tall, handsome, athletic, fit, smart, funny and sweet. He even has good hair and the most beautiful eyes. Jay and I had been friends from kindergarten up till high school. When we were in primary school he confessed many times, but I only considered him a friend. I never saw him to be as handsome and amazing as everyone else did. Because I saw him almost all the time of my life. About a month and a half ago, Jay once again confessed to me. This time he did it more maturely and more in a sweet way that I actually felt butterflies in my stomach. But I wasn't sure I felt the same. His confession did really make me think of it, but I really valued our friendship more and I didn't think I felt anything for Jay. So once again I rejected him in a way I regret to this day. I laughed and said, "So I'm still your little obsession. Grow up and move on already, Jay." His face after I said that made me regret my words. He didn't laugh like I did. It seemed like he was fighting back tears. I honestly didn't think he was being 100% serious because he would always say how he will confess 100 times a week to wait for me to say yes. Jay just walked away and left. He didn't come to school the next day. He didn't come outside when I went to call him to walk together to school. He ignored my calls and texts, and when he did see them, he never responded. At first I was angry at him. Why was he taking rejection so seriously? I already rejected him enough times for him to get used to it, that's what I thought then. But the more I didn't get the notification of his text, his random FaceTimes, the goofy TikToks he'd send me, the more I didn't get to see his name pop up on my notifications, I felt bad. I had made so many tries to text him when I finally sent him an apology of a paragraph, but it was then I found out, he blocked me. He came back to school after missing 2.5 weeks out. Those 2.5 weeks I thought of him always. Our desks were together, so I'd zone out while staring at his desk. One of my friends even told me I might have fallen for you, but I denied it. I denied it until I saw him when he came back. Jay looked like a whole different person. He had dyed his blonde hair jet black and had gotten an amazing haircut. His aura completely changed as soon as he entered the class. Everyone looked at him and I did too. He sat down at his desk and didn't even turn to look at me. Everyone came and showered him with compliments about his good haircut, and he suddenly had the most charming smile as he thanked everyone. Well, everyone but me. I turned to him with a happy smile and said, "Black hair really suits you well. You look so handsome." But he ignored me and continued to speak to this other guy who even stopped talking so Jay would react my comment, but nothing. He ignored me the whole morning, and when our homeroom teacher came he asked to switch seats but was denied. He ignored me and hang out with the people he knew I didn't like. He always walk away when I tried to talk to him. I had actually come to accept that I liked him back. I even asked my friends and my sister and even my mom if feeling certain ways after he left meant I liked him, and my mom said, "Maybe he just needed to leave for you to realize how much you care for him." And my friends and sister said the same. I decided to go and tell him the day after he returned. I didn't get the chance in the morning because he went to his new friends, and when I tried to talk to him he went away. I felt so bad that I went crying in the girls' bathroom. I regretted it. I regretted it so much. I wished I had just accepted his feelings then and tried to see if I'd fall for him with time. I shouldn't have waited this long. He ignored me completely and acted like we were never even friends for the rest of the days that followed. I had enough of it though. Since he had me blocked everywhere, I took my sister's phone and sent him a long message confessing my feelings, apologizing and asking him if we could be friends again and telling him how much I missed him. I begged him to talk to me and really hoped he would see it. Now I'm waiting for his reply. I feel so distressed I want to cry. I feel anxious. I feel like he'll make fun of me. Or reject me, even worse, but I'm ready for any response as long as he talks to me and reads my message. I don't care if he hates me now. I know I made him angry and I want to fix it. I feel sorry for how mean I rejected him too. What made you suddenly lose interest in someone you wanted? We met online and would talk for hours on a daily basis. After 2 years he needed a place to stay, so I said he could come stay with me. It soon became clear when he arrived why I only ever saw headshots. He was morbidly obese, like 28 stone, and disabled as a result. However, by that time, there were a lot of feelings involved, and I love people for who they are, not what they look like. So we made a go of it for 2 years. In that time, I was working full-time on the phones for a charity. When I came home, he wouldn't let me have a moment's peace and quiet, which is what I needed after a stressful day at work. Instead, he had to hold my hand constantly and would talk non-stop. I mean, I get he was on his own all day, but he would also be constantly messaging while I was at work, so I had no escape. I literally became his full-time carer on top of working 45+ hours a week. I tried desperately to help him lose weight, but there was always an excuse. What pushed me over the edge was when we discussed that I wanted kids. However, he felt that my lifestyle was not healthy enough to possibly raise children. I was an average and totally acceptable weight. In that moment, it became clear that he would never change. He had the nerve to criticize me when he had done nothing to improve himself, which filled me with rage. I told him it was over and he had 2 weeks to leave. He then told me he wanted to propose and that we should have kids right away. I noped right out of that relationship in an instant once he said that.
Redditors from foreign countries, what's something us Americans aren't ready to hear? You are the foreigner for me and around 220 countries. American bathroom stalls are exposed as F. A grown man could crawl under one of them, and the vertical gap has a big enough gap to make full-on eye contact with anyone walking by. A lot of your favorite food brands make better versions of their products here. America often gets the short end of the stick. You do have an accent. You all eat too much of sugar. Why don't you have more trains? Many first world countries get minimum 4 weeks of paid vacation leave for employees and paid maternity leave, even for the father, free healthcare. Seriously though, why is it so expensive to call an ambulance? Staying alive isn't something that should cost more than a person's net worth. The US is a great place to be rich and a bad place to be poor. Your education system is far worse than you think, and the state of your political climate proves it.
My mother pushed my father to sewer slide, and then cut her children off. When I was a kid, my parents got divorced. My mom met a guy on the internet and left my dad for him. My sisters and I were all teenagers, and being that my mom had never really been around, decided that we all wanted to live with him. We all had to write a letter stating our wishes, and it was understood that we would stay with him. My mom didn't even seem to care. Additionally, my dad had this retirement account from his old job. He wasn't rich at all and had worked his ass off for everything he'd ever had. When he got hurt on the job, he could have sued, but was promised that in exchange for him not suing, they'd keep him around. Instead, they canned him, and he left with about $100,000, I think, in a 401k type of account that he'd been saving for nearly 30 years. Lastly, my dad had his house. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath brick house that was all of about 800 SF. It wasn't much at all, but my dad loved the place. My mom couldn't stand that house and wanted to move for as long as I could remember. That was another contentious subject that led to the divorce. He'd been paying on it forever, and when he left his old job, he took out a small chunk and paid it off. Anyway, their separation is progressing, and it's understood we're living with him. She was so in love with this internet guy that she didn't care. He was in school halfway around the country and she was going to move there to be with him. We knew we'd get by just fine. They seemed amicable, and it was understood how this would all play out. The day in court finally comes, and instead of what we all assumed, even my dad's lawyer, she goes to the court with all these crazy claims. He was an abusive alcoholic, he beat us and my mom nightly, he was crazy and no one would be safe in his care. My mom got full custody, she got 50% of his house and 50% of his retirement account. My dad was stunned. That judgment would basically bankrupt him. In order for him to keep the house, he'd essentially have to clean out his retirement account and give her everything. The night of their divorce, I went over to see him. He was almost catatonic. He just stared off in space the entire time and would mumble whenever I asked him a question. I've never seen anyone like that ever. My birthday was 2 days away and I asked if he wanted to do something for my birthday, and he just answered with, "Your mom has full custody. I will if she allows me to see you." I asked if I could drive his old truck to school, since I didn't yet have a car, and he just said no, that I needed to call my mom and have her pick me up. So that's what I did. And the next day in school, the day before my birthday, I'm sitting in our lunchroom when I hear, "Hey, isn't that your grandpa?" from a buddy of mine. I look over and see my grandpa and a cop making their way across the lunchroom toward me. They told me to grab my stuff, and in the office I found my sister there as well. We rode home with them, where we were also met by my little sister, and that's where they told us that our dad had unalived himself, shortly after I left the previous night. To make matters worse, it all happened so quickly that nothing had been finalized. My mom dropped all her paperwork and legally became a widow and got everything: house, retirement, and his insurance policy. She also got Social Security benefits for us, a fact we didn't find out until much later. She basically took all the money and moved across the country with her new man, leaving us to care for ourselves for the most part. And to this day, when asked about raising us, she'll spin this story of a young widow, doing her best to raise 3 kids on her own. I've spent more nights than I'd care to admit wishing it had been her instead of my dad. What if I fall in love with someone else after I get married? What if my husband is not the one? I am going to let you and everyone else reading into a secret that only those who have been married for 50+ years know. Sit down, as it is a blinder. Love is a choice. Fidelity is a choice. Marriage is a choice. Divorce is a choice. It's not about hearts and flowers. It's not about frantic sex constantly. It's not like the romance novels and movies we have all been fed. That is all a load of bollocks. Those who have been married for 50+ years will all have had times when they raise the question if they should continue to be married. They all will have met people other than their spouses who they think are just perfect. They all will have had times when they really didn't like their spouse. They all will have had times when their spouse has done things that hurt them, annoyed them. They all have been through times when they are broke or have struggled. The difference is the choices that those couples make. They make an active choice to resolve their issues. They make an active choice to see the beauty in the person they chose. They make an active decision to stay faithful and to stay in love and direct that love towards their partner. They make an effort to put in the work required to make their relationship work. Sometimes it's really hard work, a lot of sacrifices are made on both sides, but they make the choice to put that work in. The one is the person that you chose to be with, and they chose to be with you despite all this. There is no such thing as the one. You chose to make that person your one. Not many think of that when they get married these days. They are more concerned about dresses and drinks and meals, etc. That isn't marriage. That is a show. So before you get married, imagine that you are in financial difficulty, or they lose their job, put on weight. Imagine how you will get through when one of you just doesn't want sex or they don't compliment you for a while. Imagine how you will deal with difficult conversations about things like finances, fears of infidelity, how you will deal with children, awkward relatives, etc. Imagine they have an accident and need round-the-clock care. Will you still want to be with that person? If the answer is yes, and an honest yes that does not have rose-tinted glasses, then get married. If the answer is no, then don't. You won't go to my wedding? I won't go to yours either. I'll start at the beginning. My ex-husband was a good father but a terrible husband. I divorced him when my oldest was 14 and youngest was 10. Well, he ended up spiraling and the kids were exposed to that. I was blamed for ruining Dad. He got better after a few years but ending up doing it again when he learned I was dating. So the kids kept trying to get me not to date since it will affect their dad. It was an awful time since to the kids I was still responsible for what he did and reacted to things. In the end I just kept my dating on the low end, which wasn't hard since it wasn't introducing the kids to the men anyways. All I had to change was not posting on social media. Also, yes, I sent the kids to therapy. They all stopped when they hit 18 or my middle child refused to talk, so I pulled him. The oldest is now 25 and youngest is 21 and I got proposed to. I sat them down and told them. They were not happy and were pissed I was doing this to Dad. Lots of talk later and I thought it was good. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I got a text from all the kids saying they will not be at my wedding, that they need to support Dad during this time. I had enough and texted them that if they do not go to my wedding it will damage our relationship and I will not be attending their own weddings when they get married. They were pissed and it started an argument and all of them think I'm a huge jerk. I truly hate that I can't do anything that makes me happy since it will affect my ex. Sorry for errors on phone and not native speaker. Update, I realized I'm okay letting them go, I can't do it anymore. I sent a text, it is up to them if they go or not. If they do go I have hope to fix this relationship, if not I'm just done. I can't keep playing this game. It's for everything, anytime I have something good his feelings have to come first. I can't do that anymore, it hurts too much. I could tell them everything he has done but I don't feel like blowing up their image of him. Update 2, someone private messaging me convinced me to lay it all out for them, so I did. Well, I got my response, they called me a liar. Even with showing old screenshot that were in our divorce case, I think it is over. Thanks for everyone that tried to help. I known this was a no-win situation, I did fuck it and sent every single thing including this post. I'm secretly in love with my girl best friend, and after seeing her new boyfriend I don't know what to do. My girl best friend Amy and I have been best friends since we were 2 and we spent every day together until adulthood. Everyone has always told us we'd one day get married, and even though I secretly loved that idea and dreamed about it, Amy never agreed. If anything she'd shut it down and explain how I'm the closest thing to a brother she could ever have. I value that, but at the same time, I see her as the perfect romantic partner and not as a sister, so it hurts me knowing that she doesn't see me as more than a friend. This running joke continued until we were 17, time and time again family and friends would bring this up and say things like, so, when's the wedding? And she would publicly reject me by laughing it off. The older I got, the more I struggled to handle these jokes, even though I knew she never meant to hurt me. I decided that it was time to move on because otherwise I was that pathetic guy friend, and so I started dating a girl whom Amy always seemed to feel concerned about, which made me suspect that Amy was finally seeing what she was missing. But she never said anything to act in a way that would suggest any jealousy, even though I ignored her for months and focused on this other girl. Girlfriend after girlfriend. It seemed that Amy never really cared that I was with other women and gave them my full attention. She would become close friends with each of them and would laugh about how much she loved my exes, but never seemed affected when my attention would shift away from her and onto the next girl. I would cut her off for months, never talk to her until something went wrong and I felt super vulnerable. Amy would always pick up the phone and be there to comfort me, which made me love her even more. Yet I never asked how she was, how her life was going, and now I wish I had done those things. This was mainly because I couldn't cope with being in a relationship and in contact with Amy. And the last thing I wanted was to hurt whoever I was with, because I always felt like I was emotionally cheating even though I actively didn't want to, and avoided situations that would increase the chances of me doing that. Last night I was in a bar with some friends and Amy came running up to me with a massive smile on her face. Behind her stood the most gorgeous man I had ever seen. He was perfect for her and complimented her beautifully. She hugged me and said, "Meet Hugh, my boyfriend." It felt like I had been sucker punched in the gut as I shook his hand and observed his wide shoulders and large brown eyes. I don't know how to tell her that I am truly in love with her and have been my entire life. I also know that telling her would be selfish because she is happy, and I also don't want her to think that our friendship has been a lie. I would rather be her friend and have her in my life than be a stranger, and so it is a tough situation to be in. I don't think I will ever fall out of love with her, which feels so bleak because I don't see how I am meant to have a healthy relationship if half of me belongs to her. It has been 2 weeks since I met her new boyfriend and I don't know what to do because I am a complete mess. My current girlfriend saw the change in me after that night, and yesterday she ended things saying that I was obviously into Amy and that she felt too hurt by the feelings I was hiding from her. I don't blame her for leaving. I liked her a lot, but she was right, which makes me feel so ashamed. Can someone please give me some advice so I can get closure? The creepy guy that tried to rob me. So I'm walking back to my house, just having a nice nighttime stroll, it was a very peaceful, quiet area, and I wasn't fearful for my safety whatsoever. Well, boy, was I effing wrong about that, because halfway through my walk, I see some dude just standing at this corner, talking to himself. Now at first glance, I didn't really care, I didn't really bother me, didn't scare me or anything, but then as I got closer to him, I realized that he was very angry about something. I don't know what it was, but he was literally screaming at himself, like angry yelling at himself. And I just thought to myself, alright, you know what, I'm just gonna walk by real quickly, turn on the street I need to turn on, and then just walk down that street, and I'll be home, I'll be fine. So I quickly passed by this guy, and I thought that was the end of it, but then I heard him go, "Yo bro," and I turned around, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I was like, "Yeah, what's up man?" He goes, "You got $1?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm so sorry, I actually don't." He's like, "Are you lying to me?" I was like, "No man, I'm not lying to you, I don't have $1. He goes, "Listen bro, I just need $1 so I can get home, I need to take a bus." And I was like, "I get it man, I totally get it, but I actually don't have $1, like I'm sorry." And this was the truth, I wasn't lying, I didn't have any cash on me whatsoever, I only had my debit card, and that was it. And he goes, "I know you're lying bro, everyone has $1 on them at least." And I was like, "Dude, I promise, look," I pulled out my wallet, and I showed him it, and that was my mistake. I should not have done that, I'm a dumbass for doing that. He sees that I have my debit card in there, and he proceeds to put his hand in his hoodie pocket real quick, and goes, "Give me your wallet bro." And I was like, "Alright man, I don't want any problems like here," and I handed it to him. Because I don't know what he could have had in that effing pocket, it could have been nothing, it could have just been his hand, it could have been a knife, it could have been a gun, it could have been a goddamn water gun, I don't know bro, either way, I'm not taking my chances and getting effing stabbed or whatever, like I'm just gonna give it to him. And then all of a sudden, headlights shine in my face, and at this dude, and the window rolls down from the car, and it's 4 of my friends leaving my friend's party going home. So I run over to their cars as fast as I can, and I jump in that beach, and my friend can see it on my face, he can see how scared I look. He's like, "Are you good? Like you look kinda freaked out." I was like, "Yeah, that dude just robbed me." He's like, "What, that dude just robbed you?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh F no." And this dude proceeds to start getting out of his own car, and they surround this dude on the corner of the street, and they're like, "Yo, you just robbed my friend?" And the dude's like, "No, I didn't rob your friend," and my friend's like, "Oh really, 'cause I think my homie Austin just got robbed, and you're the one that did it." He's like, No, I don't want any trouble, like here, and he pulls out my phone and my wallet and hands it back to me, and says sorry. And I was like, "Oh good man." Well that was effing poop. I swear there's nothing good on television anymore, it's all just a bunch of, wait what the F?
My boyfriend thinks I cheated on him because I'm pregnant. But I've never had intimacy. Yeah, pretty much exactly what the title says. I, 16, have my V card, so is my boyfriend, 16. We're both young, and neither of us are ready for intimacy. Personally, it's never been high on my radar, and from what he's told me, he's the same way. That being said, we've been together for a couple of years now, so things have still happened. I'd rather not go into detail on that, but you can get the picture. Think third base, I guess. Anyways, a couple of days ago, I went to the doctor because I've been feeling really sick lately. I did a urine test and a finger prick, and my doctor told me I was pregnant. Of course, I laughed at first because I thought she was joking, but no, I'm really pregnant. I kind of fell silent. She started talking about things like ultrasounds, prenatal vitamins, etc., but I cut her off and told her that wasn't possible because I've never had intimacy, therefore have never conceived. She explained to me that very few women can get pregnant by outercourse, but it's still possible due to anatomy or something. I was, and still am, in complete and utter shock, so I kinda just left without any further explanation. I had driven myself because both of my parents work, I went straight to my boyfriend's house, and he was the first person I told. I hadn't even texted or called in advance because I was crying, completely distraught. I don't know why, but it didn't even cross my mind that he would think I cheated. I would never do something like that. I explained everything to him about how we'd never technically had intimacy, but we got really close, and stuff can happen. He seemed pretty lost until I eventually told him I was pregnant. Which is when he, rightfully, got pissed at me because how the heck does that even happen without us having had intimacy? I tried so hard to explain myself and assure him that I'd never do that, ever. I told him I'd take a DNA test or something to prove that, but he didn't believe a word and made me go home. The last thing he told me was, "I really trusted you." He looked like he was about to cry. Now I'm blocked on everything, so I can't text or call explaining myself. I'll respect his decision if he wants to break up, but I need him to know I was never with anyone else. It's been killing me, knowing how hurt he must feel. Luckily, he hasn't told anyone that I'm pregnant because I haven't even told my own parents yet, but he has told people that I cheated on him, and now I'm losing friends and everything's gone to crap. This was already the worst, lowest point of my life, And it seems to be getting worse. I've basically locked myself in my room. I feel so depressed. I just need him to know.
To win $3 billion, you have to survive 24 hours getting chased by a horror villain of your choice. Who are you picking? Why? Chucky. I'll kick that little effer so far. Freddy Krueger. I've been awake for longer than 24 hours before. I'll just play some Halo and wait for the clock to run out. Jaws. I won't even go in the shower. Zombies from The Walking Dead. I'd hear them coming and just climb onto a roof for a little while. Dracula. Don't invite anyone in the house for 24 hours. What can he do? Be spooky at me through a window? I'll take the challenge and have the alien from A Quiet Place. The answer is Chucky. I just stand in an open field for 24 hours and kick him like a soccer ball every time he approaches. The things in Bird Box. Stay home, close the blinds. Jason Voorhees. He's slow AF, so just walk briskly and keep him in sight and you're golden. Would be a long 24 hours, but manageable.
What is an automatic green flag when you enter someone's house for the first time? You see a cat, but you don't smell a cat. That's the sign of someone who has their shit together. Multiple cats? Marriage material. Visible hobbies, art projects, books, game console, whatever it is. Shows the person actually enjoys themselves. Happy pets. Has soap and clean hand towel in bathroom. Seriously, I question everything about your hygiene and cleanliness if you do not have them. Friendly, well cared for animal of any type. My experience has been there is a correlation of how you care for animals and how you are as a person. Edit. Just to clarify, don't think protective, scared, rescue. Even unfriendly animals are red flags, just yellow flags compared to friendly animals. Clean, smells pleasant, doesn't look like a hoarder home. It smells good without smelling like artificial air fresheners or cleaning chemicals. Like it just smells nice and fresh and clean. Recently, I went on a date with a guy, and we quickly stopped by his house to get extra clothes. Before I came in, he said meet the kids, and there was 2 Celsius a TS. Immediate green flag.
My psycho roommate wants me to use the microwave in the closet. I moved in with my roommate recently and I've noticed that she's quite inconsiderate of other people's needs. I also think it's important to highlight that her parents own this house. It's a 2-bedroom apartment and we have our own private rooms, but we share some common areas such as the kitchen. Now, my roommate is very specific about how she wants the kitchen to be. She basically doesn't allow me to keep any of my daily use appliances such as my blender on the countertop. She's okay with having her appliances on the kitchen countertop, but anytime I place something that I use, she immediately removes it without any communication. Now this is not even the worst part. Apparently, she doesn't use a microwave or cook in general, so she wants us to keep this microwave inside a cupboard with pots and pans and expects me to either take it out and lift it up every single time I use it or plug an extension cord every time I use it and plug it out after I'm done. Please note that this cupboard shelf is literally on the ground level and doesn't even have enough ventilation to use safely. I have back problems, so after tolerating this for 3 weeks, I told her that I'm finding it really tedious to have to do this and it would be much more convenient to have it on one of the countertops. She refused. She said she's not going to let me have it in that space. I asked her for alternative options and she suggested that we move the microwave to a closet, which is not even in the kitchen, where we store cleaning appliances and coats and other miscellaneous stuff. This closet does not have an electrical outlet, so obviously I would have to repeat the same poop of pulling out an extension cord every damn time I use it. Also, when I brought up my back pain, she gaslighted me by saying that there's no way I have pain while I'm bending down to microwave my food. She did not acknowledge it and just dismissed whatever I said by saying that she doesn't use the microwave, so she's not okay with it being on the countertop. I'm sick of this and I think it's really unfair. I would appreciate some advice, especially considering this power dynamic. Update: thank you everyone for suggesting that I should stand my ground. I finally confronted her and it turns out she didn't want to have the microwave on the countertop because she's afraid of all the radiation in the air and that it makes her very uncomfortable. I was at a loss for words, but I succeeded at having her agree with me, so that's a win. My psycho roommate wants me to use the microwave in the closet. If you haven't read the original post, my roommate doesn't allow me to keep any of my appliances on the countertop in the kitchen and instead expects me to use it in a cabinet under the counter or in a closet, for which I have to plug/unplug an extension cord each time I use it. After having a discussion with her via text, she told me that she's afraid of all the radiation in the air, but that's what she decided to get over. I assumed this was her saying that she's okay with me putting it on the counter, but boy was I wrong. A couple days after this conversation, the microwave is back in the cabinet. Apparently she just allowed me to have it on the countertop for a week, after I told her I have chronic back pain and she thought my back pain would magically disappear in a week's time. I confronted her about this immediately and her response was that she never agreed to having it on the countertop permanently. She's very rigid about the rules and honestly I'm so frustrated because she's probably going to act entitled in many different situations. I wish I could just move out, but I can't. I still have more than 6 months on the lease. I'm not allowed to sublet this place and there's a housing crisis in my city. She's obviously aware of this and she had the audacity to tell me that there's a lot of people who would be more than happy to live in this apartment. She even asked me why it's such a big deal. I hate this power dynamic and the fact that she cunningly uses the housing crisis and her parents being the owner as a leverage for acting this way. I've considered reaching out to her parents as they are the landlords on the lease, but I'm afraid that they might support her and potentially evict me. It's effed up. I'm a student and I unfortunately don't have anywhere else to go if I decide to move out. My peanut-licking ex tried to trick me into being a dad. My ex demanded me for child support for a kid that is not mine. My mother and sister are on their side. Some years ago, I dated a girl. The relationship was bad. She was very controlling and abusive. It ended up really bad and we broke up. I kept going on with my life, and after some years I got a decent job, enough to solve all my needs, have a comfortable life and make some savings. The thing is, a couple months after getting my job, my ex contacted me. She first asked me to talk. I believed that she may want to reconnect or something, but she showed up with a 5-year-old child, claiming he was my son and demanding child support. I didn't believe her, but the child's age matched the time since we cut contact. I got advice from a lawyer, a friend of mine, to try to solve this out of the court. I offered to take responsibility, pay all the costs and be an active part of the kid's life, only after making a DNA test. Everyone was okay with this except for my ex. She acted offended and demanded to just give her the money she deserved. She used all the excuses she could, even contacted my family to tell them I was trying to avoid taking responsibility for her child. When she ran out of excuses, and the DNA test was finally made, and surprise, I'm not the father. She was so mad with the result, and cried about the money, saying it was unfair and she deserved it. But she didn't accomplish anything. Moving on to last week, there was a little party at my parents' house. My brother, a friend and I were talking, and my brother started to joke about the situation with my ex. My friend and I started to joke about it too. Some of our comments were a little dark and bad, but we were far away from the rest of the people. Literally we were on the opposite side of the house, and nobody else could hear us, at least that was what we thought. We were laughing like crazies when my sister appeared very angry and pushed me against the wall. She spied us and heard our conversation and she was really mad. She started to yell at us about how horrible people we were for mocking a poor woman. Few hours later, when the party ended, she asked me to go to the kitchen with our parents, and she started to say how awful I was for the previous situation. Apparently, my ex had been in contact with her, and she believed her version, and that was her way to have an intervention. My brother and I were like, "Are you serious?" When she started to say how I forced my ex into being a single mother and that I have the moral obligation to help her. My dad only said that we maybe were being too cruel making jokes of her, but that I wasn't responsible for that kid. My mom then surprised all of us when she said even if the kid is not yours, you are making more than enough money to support that child, you should have helped her. Since then, I had been receiving texts, my dad and my brother are on my side, saying I'm not responsible for her, but my sister is telling me how horrible I am for ruining their lives. My mom only said it's your decision and I respect it. I'm just very disappointed that you ended up being so selfish. I'm aware that she doesn't deserve my money and I'm not planning to give her any, but the constant harassment of my sister trying to guilt me, it's just exhausting.
What is the most effed up true story you know? I live in a small town. I am on the volunteer fire department. We received a page one night of a structure fire with children inside. We arrive on scene to a badly burned mother outside, father outside fine, house engulfed, and neighbor holding a child. The mother was screaming her boys were in there, 3 of them. We make entrance and had the fire knocked down in 3 minutes. It was like 3 a.m. and hard to see anything as it was all burned. We were feeling around the boys' bedroom when another guy felt something and it made a noise, so he scooped it up and ran for the ambulance thinking he found a child still alive. When he got there it was a burn-up teddy bear with a noisemaker inside of it. The father sprayed them all with lighter fluid and lit the house. The mother woke up and saved the one daughter but got burnt badly when she went back in. The neighbor caught him trying to put the child back in the window before we arrived. His excuse in court was he did it for the insurance. It was a rental and he hadn't paid his insurance premium in over a year. I know that night sticks with a lot of guys on the department and the community as a whole still.
I sued my ableist teacher and it made my family rich. I have a weird medical condition that most people have not heard about. It's simple really. I have an overactive bladder due to nerve damage, but I never thought it would make me rich. Ever since I was a child, I have had to go to the bathroom to urinate about every hour or two. It's honestly a very difficult condition to live with. My life is constantly being interrupted. I can't sit and watch long movies. I have to always know where the nearest bathroom is and it keeps me from doing a lot of the things I want to do. I'm only 18 now, but I often find myself worrying about how the rest of my life will be so different from others because of my condition. I was diagnosed when I was 13 and ever since then I've had accommodations at school so I can use the bathroom whenever I need to. I was given a permanent bathroom pass. Every teacher I've had since my diagnosis has known about my condition and been very understanding. I've never had a teacher tell any other students about why I was able to leave class often, and I like having privacy around my condition. I never had any issues with my teachers when it came to my medical condition. That was until I started my sophomore year. I had this old teacher named Mrs. Hannigan. She was generally unpleasant and would go on long rants about complaining about my generation and how we got handed everything we needed. She would go on and on about how us kids didn't want to work hard and got participation awards for everything we did. She was annoying and no one in my class liked her. I had only been in her class for about a week until she decided to publicly humiliate me. I had been using my bathroom pass like normal and I just assumed that she had been told about my condition and why I needed to leave so often. Mrs. Hannigan's class was about an hour and a half long, so I typically used the bathroom at least once, maybe twice during her class. This day, I needed to use it. Twice during class time, but when I stood up to leave the room the second time, Mrs. Hannigan decided to call me out in front of everyone. I started to walk out the door and she said, loudly, "Wow, you really can't hold it at your age? You need to get your act together, young lady." A bunch of my classmates started giggling. I felt so embarrassed and I wanted to sit right back down even though I really did need to go. I looked at the floor and told her that I was sorry but I really needed to go. She looked back down at her computer and said, "Once during my class is enough, you can certainly hold it until after class. Now sit back down and finish your work." I wanted to cry. She wasn't giving me a chance to explain and I didn't feel comfortable telling her about my condition in front of the whole class. I ended up sinking back down into my seat and fighting for my life as I tried my best to hold my pee until her class finally ended. By the time I got to the bathroom I was bursting and I was in a lot of pain. It was awful and I cried out of humiliation in the bathroom. It also hurt to urinate after I had been forced to hold it. I was dreading the next day, since I knew she might say something again if I tried to use the bathroom during her class. Sure enough, the day came and even though I had used the bathroom right before her class, I had to pee 2 more times while I was sitting in her classroom. The second time I was dreading getting up, I just knew she was going to call me out. I was appalled when I started to leave the room and I heard her say, in an extremely loud voice, "Well, if it isn't the PP princess strolling off whenever she pleases again." This time the entire class started laughing. I just froze. Mrs. Hannigan walked over to me and began speaking in a low voice. She said, "I don't know how you managed to fool all your teachers before me, but I won't be playing this childish little game with you. You are a young healthy-looking lady, and I see no reason why you're unable to wait to urinate after my class. Your days of walking out of your classes whenever you feel like it are over, and I advise you to use the toilet before my class, because I won't have you coming and going wherever you please." I had never been spoken to like this by an adult. By the way, she spoke. I assumed that yes, she had been informed about my condition, but she simply didn't believe it. I had no idea what to do and I just felt like a scared, nervous little kid in that moment. She told me to sit back down and I did. As soon as I sat back down I knew what was coming. I could only hold my urine for about 10 more minutes before I felt my bladder give up. There was still 20 minutes left in the class and I had to sit in piss-soaked pants for that entire time. Afterward, I tried my best to cover it up even though a couple of other kids noticed and I heard whispers as everyone exited the classroom. Either Mrs. Hannigan hadn't noticed or didn't care that I had soiled myself, so I went straight to the office after class and asked to call my mom so she could bring me clothes. I told the secretary everything that had happened with Mrs. Hannigan so far, and she looked concerned. She ended up going to the guidance counselor and the principal and informing them both of the situation. When my mom showed up with my clean clothes, I broke down and told her everything that happened as well. I had never seen my mom so angry. She went into my principal's office and they stayed in there talking for a long time before I started to hear my mom raise her voice. When I got home that night, I overheard my parents talking about the situation. That was when I found out that they planned to sue Mrs. Hannigan and the school for not reprimanding her. Apparently, in the office that day, my mom demanded she be punished or put on leave, but all they said was that she was from a different time and she didn't mean to harm me. My mom told them that she had already harmed me, and that our family wouldn't stand for this. After that day, Mrs. Hannigan continued to treat me horribly, but she never commented on my bathroom use again. It took my parents about 2 years, but by the time I was graduating they had won their case against the school. Apparently, since it was a disability-related suit and I was a minor, the settlement the school paid out was extremely high. My family ended up making enough money that both my parents quit their jobs and we ended up moving into a much nicer house. When I think back to that awful day when I had the accident in Mrs. Hannigan's class, I don't want to cry anymore. I just smile thinking about how my parents and I ended up getting the last laugh and Mrs. Hannigan learned not to discriminate against her students' disabilities.
What false fact did you believe in for way too long? That cracking your knuckles is bad for you and causes arthritis. A doctor cracked his knuckles only on one hand and not the other for decades. Both hands were the same. Not exactly scientific but interesting. 2. That spiders have big territories. So if your father killed the enormous spider in your room it was safe to go to bed, because there would be no other spiders in the whole house. 3. Swallowing bubblegum will make it remain forever in your stomach. 4. I had a number of blind people put on sunglasses they could see. 5. I had no clue that pickles and cucumbers were the same thing. I went to grow my first garden and commented that you can't find pickle seeds anywhere. Face palm. 6. As younger I believed that in different countries a version of myself was there. Like, I thought that in France there was a French version of myself living a regular life. 7. My grandfather loved dark chocolate. He always told my dad that dark chocolate is poisonous to children so he wouldn't take any. The problem is, he never corrected him. So when my dad was 23 and at a friend's house, the one with dark chocolate, cue my dad leaping from the couch, shouting, "No," and slapping the chocolate out of the toddler's hand. 8. That the doctor tied a knot in your umbilical cord when you're born. You have an innie or outie belly button. 9. When I was learning to drive, my dad told me that if you go over 75, the tears can overheat and explode. I believed that for way longer than I would like to admit. 10. My parents told me the ice cream truck only played music when it was out of ice cream. 11. That your blood is blue inside your body and it only turns red when it's oxygenated. I only learned last year that it's a myth. Man, how stupid I feel ever. 12. That pickles came from trees. 13. Banana nut muffins were made from a banana nut. Just a type of nut called a banana nut. I was 20 years old when I learned they were made from bananas and nuts. 14. I thought milk was cow pee until I was like 8. It just made sense to me and I never questioned it. 15. I used to think that eating cold turkey somehow helped people quit smoking. 16. My dad told me as a young child that the Great Wall of China was actually built to keep rabbits out of all their crops. I told people that for years.
What happened to you when you were young that you didn't understand until years later? When I was 6 and my brother was 4, we used to walk to our cousin's house, which was 2 houses down. One evening, we asked our mother if we could go over and she said yes and lets us walk over by ourselves. While we're walking, this car drives up to us and asks if we knew where the nearest McDonald's was and if we'd like to come with him. I told him we weren't allowed to eat McDonald's without our mother's permission, and turned to get her to ask if we were allowed. She was already running outside to get us when the car sped off. I was around 15 when I was reminiscing with my family and she brought it up. Creepy realization. In kindergarten I had a best friend named Daniel and we played with toy dinosaurs and traded them all the time. January comes around and I invite him to my birthday party I was having at my house. He never showed up that day, and my mom told me that day he wasn't going to be able to make it as well as he wouldn't be able to come to school again. Little kid me was like, okay, you'll see him later. He died in a car crash on the way to my birthday party.
What's the most impressive thing your parents have done? Lied to me for 54 years. Successfully. At 21 I was complaining to my cousin that I loathed my father and was sick of his abuse. Her reply: what if I told you that he's not your father? For 2 years my parents told me that it's a lie and to drop it. Dad dies in 2004. A few years later I get suspicious again because my siblings have diabetes, perfectly healthy and fit. I don't. Dad's parents enablings LL had it by 50. But I don't act on it. 2010 youngest goes off to college in the hubs and I get a call from mom that she would like to share her home with us. I asked why. She said because I need one of my kids on my side, the other 4 want me in a nursing home. Her only health issue was Parkinson's. She had it for 30 years but wasn't disabled or senile until 2 to 3 years before her death in 2021. January 2021, one day in 2014 she is asking me to show her how to look up an old beau. I searched everywhere and couldn't find him. He had a super rare name so I was surprised. I don't think twice about it, but it's really important. 2018, my sibs and I are arguing over our heritage. Some think we are Scottish. Some Irish. We all order tests, take them the same day and ship them off. We all get our results the same day. We are in fact Scottish, or should I say they are. And right there where it says father is a name I recognize. Mom's old beau. WTF? So the man had his DNA on Ancestry.com at 84, could he have known about me? I quickly email him. No answer, but he has 2 sons. I quickly emailed one of them. He gets back to me. They had no idea and sadly my birth father had died 7 months prior. They say he would have welcomed me with open arms and would have loved me, so they successfully lied. I was suspicious because I was the only one he physically disciplined. First I was angry that mother allowed this man to lay hands on me. Knowing he wasn't my father and most likely taken it out on me that mom lied to him. The saddest part is they had at least 3 chances to tell me. Instead I found out myself 7 months too late. They cheated me out of a dad and a better life. I don't grieve for them. Not like a daughter would really. I love them, I just can't grieve with all this anger over being their dirty little secret and robbing me of knowing my biological dad. Friends say, oh but he was your father, he raised you and blah blah blah. No. He's not my father. He mistreated me and abused me. So to hell with him. I found condoms and hair ties in my boyfriend's bathroom. and I was beyond suspicious. It was like finding a smoking gun in his room, so I decided to investigate. I noticed how he would hide his phone from me in the late night work meetings and guys' night out that seemed to happen more often than usual. I finally confronted him about it and he denied it, saying I was being paranoid and that he loved me. But as I kept pushing, he finally broke down and revealed the truth. He confessed to seeing other women and using the condoms to protect himself. The hair ties? He had a thing for tying women up during intimacy. I was outraged, heartbroken, and disgusted all at once. I couldn't believe the man I loved and trusted had been lying to me and treating me like a fool. But that wasn't even the worst part. As I was ending things with him and packing my stuff, he made a creepy request that still sends shivers down my spine. He asked if he could still keep the hair ties I had found in his bathroom as a souvenir of our relationship. I was so disgusted and creeped out that I grabbed my stuff and ran out of there as fast as I could. Now, I'm left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart and try to move on from this nightmare of a relationship. I'm determined to not let this experience define me and to learn from it. I'm now more aware of the signs of a bad relationship and how to protect myself from such heartache in the future. But as for my ex-boyfriend, I want him to get the help he needs and to never pull this sick poop on anyone else ever again. I'm still haunted by the thought of what could have been if I had just trusted my gut and taken action sooner. I guess I'll never know. What's your craziest parking story? It's been about a decade since this happened. No, that does not make me a fossil. I live on a street where some houses have driveways, but some of us don't and we have to park in the street. We had just enough room to park our 2 vehicles in front of our house. A new neighbor moved in across the street. I'll call her Brittany. Brittany had a tiny Prius and parked in front of our house a lot. She didn't have a driveway. The space in front of her house was almost always empty when this happened. At the time, I had a toddler and a newborn, and getting them into the house was a pain when I had to circle the block and park on the other side of the street, hauling the car seat in one hand while juggling a diaper bag, groceries, and a toddler that hadn't developed a sense of self-preservation yet. The thing that got to me was that there would be plenty of space for 2 cars to park, but Brittany couldn't be bothered to pull forward or scoot back. She usually parked right in the middle so no one else could park near her car. One day, I had had enough. I hauled the baby, the stuff, and the toddler up to her porch and knocked politely on her door. Hey, I live across the street. I was just wondering if you could park in front of your house instead of mine, please. Brittany, that's, like, really inconvenient for me to drive around the whole block just to park. I know. But, as you can see, gesturing to the circus at my feet, I have my hands full. It makes it harder when you park in front of my house. Can you please try parking in front of yours instead? Brittany, look, I'll just park where I want. There's no assigned spaces. Door slam. Oh, it was on. I wasn't sure what my revenge would be, but I knew it would be coming. The opportunity came a couple days later. I came home and my spouse was already parked in front of her car. But lo, the next door neighbor wasn't home yet. I could park behind her. I'd have to scoot up to make sure there was enough room for my other neighbor. They were innocent in all this. So I pulled up behind them and checked the space. 2 feet of room. Back into the car to inch forward some more. Checked again. Still had a good foot. I kept doing this till there was literally inches between our bumpers. And here's the thing, I had 2 cars at my disposal now, whereas she only had 1. So into the spouse's van I go to inch backwards until they were only inches from kissing bumpers. Perfect. Point of note, both of my vehicles were old, scratched, and beat up. I probably wouldn't notice another dent in them. But the Prius was pristine. I knew Brittany wasn't likely to risk it. I expected that I would get a knock on the door sometime that evening. But when I took the trash out that night, Brittany and her Prius were gone. She must have executed a 200-point turn to get out. I cackled to myself and went to bed happy. The best part was, she stopped parking on my side of the street after that one incident. I guess she realized it really was more convenient to park on hers.
My gold-digging girlfriend wants me to pay her loans instead of helping my family because they are taking advantage of me. I ended up kicking her out of my house. My younger sister is working towards getting her master's degree in New York. While she loves the city and school, she hates how expensive everything has become. She does work part-time, but it simply isn't enough. My parents have been sending her money each month, but since they recently retired, they've had to cut back. To fill the gap, my brother and I have begun sending some money to our sister from time to help with her rent. I have a well-paying job and a close relationship with my sister, so I'm happy to help where I can. However, my girlfriend has expressed her dissatisfaction with the arrangement. We've been saving up to put a down payment on a house in the future, and my girlfriend believes that my financial contributions to my sister are hindering our progress. Yesterday, my girlfriend told me that we needed to reduce expenses, and one suggestion she made was for me to no longer send money to my sister. She believes that my sister needs to learn how to manage her money better and that my brother should contribute more. I told her about how I feel a responsibility towards my sister and how my brother doesn't make as much as I do, and while she did acknowledge that, she then said I was financially naive and said she doesn't want me to be taken advantage of. I was kinda disappointed hearing this, as I made the conscientious decision to help my sister and wasn't falling for some sort of scam. The conversation ended because we both had to go to work, but she told me not to send anything until we further discussed this. During my lunch break at work, I proceeded to send my sister some money and told my girlfriend about this over dinner. She told me that she was disappointed. At this point, I was getting a little annoyed and responded by saying I was not willing to compromise my current arrangement with my sister. My girlfriend expressed her belief that my sister, and the whole family, is manipulating me and thinks I'm naive enough to send her money regardless of how she uses it. I started to feel increasingly annoyed and defensive by her accusations and asserted that it was my money, and I had the right to spend it as I saw fit. I then said that if she wanted us to buy a house, she should save more and cut back on expenses like nice shoes, clothes, and purses. Also, less than a month after moving in with me, my girlfriend leased a BMW, contradicting her previous statements about wanting to pay off her student loans quickly. At the time, I found it strange but didn't raise any objections, thinking that my girlfriend deserved to treat herself after years of schooling. At this point, she became properly angry and declared that she couldn't stay in the same house as me, and said that she would be going to her friend's house. Before leaving, she said, "Call me when you stop thinking like a effing idiot." Before I could even think, I replied, "I won't be calling." I kept my word and didn't call my girlfriend. Instead, early morning, around 5 a.m., she texted me, suggesting that we meet at a local cafe to discuss our future. I replied with a simple, "Sure." The atmosphere felt tense, but we did exchange brief curt greetings before we dove straight into the conversation. She began by expressing her hurt over my failure to call her, repeatedly emphasizing that I needed to be reasonable and prioritize our relationship above all else. She claimed that her initiating this meeting was proof of her commitment and that if I were truly committed, I would have called her the moment she left. At that moment, I chose to remain silent, and I believe she interpreted my silence as her winning the argument. She then shifted the conversation to finances, bluntly stating that our best course of action was to ensure neither of us carried any debt. According to her, the only way to achieve this was with me to start paying some of her loans. I insisted that this shouldn't interfere with my agreement to support my sister, if I did agree to pay her loans, but my girlfriend asserted that it would impede our progress as a couple. I argued that supporting my family and progressing in our relationship should not be mutually exclusive. In response, my girlfriend declared that if we were both serious, I needed to make her center focus. She then added that even if she did agree to allow me to continue supporting my sister, it wouldn't end there, as these things never do. With this, she then began inquiring about my parents, pointing out their advanced age and suggesting that they would soon require regular support. Without hesitation, I firmly reiterated my stance, that if my parents ever needed any form of assistance, I wouldn't hesitate to offer it. She followed up by asking, even if they wanted to live with you, to which I replied, yes. She pressed further, asking, even if I said they can't. Once again, I responded, yes. At that moment, girlfriend stood up, saying that she was disappointed to see what kind of person I've become, and how she and her friends had always sensed there was something off about me. In response, I stated, if you believe that, you shouldn't have moved in. She was unable to offer a retort to that. She then began making remarks about how it was only a matter of time before I would beg her to take me back. I firmly told her that the only thing I would be asking was for her to take her belongings and return my keys. She tossed the keys at me before making several comments, asserting that she didn't need me, that I had wasted her time, and that I greatly disappointed her. I said, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm no longer obligated to listen to you complain. With that, she stormed off.
TikTokers who have met a former crush years later, how did it turn out? Saw her at the 10-year high school reunion. She was a bit heavier than she'd been in HS, but still attractive. She was there with her Ivy League fiancé. These two facts combined to change my mindset from I want to bang my high school crush at our reunion to oh well, never mind. At one point, we were being recognized for something, and with all eyes on us, she leaned over and said, I remember what a crush you had on me. You wanted me bad. First, I couldn't really react, given the immediate circumstances. Second, I didn't detect any kind of Taco Bell type invitation in what she'd said, sorry. In fact, it almost seemed like she was just lording it over me. I mean, she was there with her fiancé, who, we determined in previous small talk, she loathed and who was awesome. For some reason, it really pissed me off. I just gave her a blank look, shrugged, and walked away. To this day, I wish I'd had some kind of witty comeback, but that's about my only regret. Haven't seen her since, but I hope she's happy. My guy best friend transitioned to a woman. Now, I want a sexual relationship with her. My friend and I have been best friends for 24 years. We're practically brothers. Our parents grew up together, so my friend and I have been together ever since we were little babies. We've always had each other's back and protected one another. My friend is an amazing person and someone I can trust completely. I'm incredibly blessed to have this person in my life. My friend transitioned to a woman a few months ago. She's completely physically a woman. She's been through hormone replacement therapy these past few years, and seeing her becoming so much happier is amazing to see. I'm absolutely proud of her. It's beautiful to see my friend now be so free and comfortable with herself. She's always having the greatest smile on her face. After she transitioned, we continued hanging out and talking like nothing changed. We go out to bars, movies, restaurants, and play video games. We kept doing what we always did. But I'm starting to fall for her and these feelings aren't going away. You know what attracted me? The way she is. My friend is now acting like herself, acting free, and full of life, always laughing, dancing, and being goofy. I've fallen in love with her true self that is absolutely beautiful. I don't know what to do. My feelings of friendship for her are turning to romantic and sexual attraction. I don't want to lose my friend. It hurts me because this is someone I grew up with and I'm afraid my feelings are going to push her away or make this awkward. I'm insanely happy being with her, but my feelings for her are killing me right now every time we're together. I've spoken to our other friends about this and I just got made fun of. They said, haha. You want to F your bro, seriously? They didn't understand where I was coming from. They didn't understand what an insanely amazing person she is. They feel it's creepy and nasty that I'm falling for my best friend. Aside from being scared of losing her, I'm afraid of what our families will think. What happens if my friend and I do not end up together? I'm afraid of not only ruining my friendship, but the friendship our parents have for many years. Both of our families were completely supportive when my friend transitioned. Not a single negative comment. Everyone is proud of her and the love our families have for her hasn't changed at all. She's always being asked out on dates, but she tells me she's looking for the right person to spend time with. I feel this is my opportunity to confess, but I don't know if I should. I don't just want to confess how I feel about her, I want an actual relationship with my friend. I have no clue what to do. I'll love to tell my friend how I feel about her, but I don't want to lose or ruin our 24-year friendship. I also don't want to make it seem that I'm falling for her just because she's now a woman. I don't want her to feel that way at all. What was the worst intimate experience you've had in college? I dated this girl that I'd known for several years already. She was really cute and one of the funniest people I'd met. I always had a crush on her in college but was in a relationship, so once we were both single I was really excited to ask her out. Our first date was amazing, until I walked her home and kissed her goodnight. I'm not sure how to put this except to say that she just didn't know how to do it. It was like she'd never kissed a person before. She'd kind of hold her closed lips against my mouth, and then with a quick, almost predatory motion, open her mouth, stick out her tongue and then snap her mouth closed again. It was like a lizard catching flies. Well, I thought, this is gonna be interesting to deal with. So we keep seeing one another for another week or two. I really like her. She really likes me. The physical attraction is there, but every time we make out it's like there's a guppy on my face. Eventually I found that if I kind of held her tight and slowly kissed her like a normal person, she'd follow my lead. Things go that way for a couple of nights, and then, at a party and after about a week and a half or so of dating, she asks me to spend the night at her place. We get to her apartment and things immediately get going. We're up against the front door and she's doing her lizard mouth thing, and I'm sort of correcting her until things are working. It was like in a movie where people undress one another as they walk to the bedroom. Her shirt was by the front door, mine on a chair, shoes kicked to 4 different corners of the hallway, pants thrown across an end table, skirt ends up in the kitchen somehow. She had the most amazing breasts I've ever seen, to this day, and then I go to take her panties off. Now, it's worth mentioning that this girl wasn't extremely dirty. We'd made out a lot but nothing under the pants had happened yet, so I was totally unfamiliar with her private parts. So I take her pants off, and out sprouts the largest bush I have ever seen. And I've been with women who were shaved bald and women who like to keep a lot of hair on and everything in between. This was a completely unkempt, unmanicured, never once in 27 years been trimmed thicket of hair. Well, I thought, this is gonna be interesting to deal with. I dutifully start making my way down to start eating, and she mercifully stops me and says I don't have to because she isn't really into that. I say a thank you prayer and we get into the main event. It went how I should have known it would. A lot of thrusting into me when I was pulling away from her and vice versa so that there was no actual friction. Then, after a few minutes, she starts moving beneath me at a totally different rhythm. I figure she's trying to get me to go faster so I try matching her pace but every time I do, she changes or keeps her hips pressed against mine. And then the smell happened. It wasn't the typical kind of overpowering awful smell people talk about, but it was just strong enough to be impossible to ignore. At this point, I start to lose my heart on and spend the next 15 minutes trying to keep my windsock penis from falling out of her. She's silent the whole time, by the way. I keep checking in with her and she keeps saying this is great, keep going. Finally, out of nowhere, she looks at me and says I finished 3 times already, you can finish. I tell her I won't be able to. Anyway, we went out once more, didn't go home together, and then she stopped returning my calls. Found out through a mutual friend that she told some people that she really liked me, but there was no chemistry.